Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is the Aspen City Council regular meeting for August 13th, 2024. Could we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Here.
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 Mayor Tory.
Here as well. With no scheduled public appearances, that'll bring us right to citizens' comments and petitions. It's an opportunity for members of the public to address council on items that are not scheduled for a public hearing on our agenda. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes so everybody has a fair and equal opportunity to be heard. Are there members of the public that wish to speak tonight? Rachel, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor Tory and Council. I'm here tonight with a couple of requests. I'm wondering if you can make the slide deck available from the 2 work sessions on the entrance to Aspen. It seemed there were information and charts that were presented there that were not in the agenda packets. I think that would be valuable information for the public to be able to access. I'm also wondering if you're going to do any sort of schematic of what the new Cemetery Lane intersection will look like with the added bus lane or general traffic lane, however it ends up being, with the new right-in only, right-out only intersection that the consultants have recommended with this alternative of the 3-lane. I had sent some questions in earlier after Mayor Tory, your first work session, saying you would try to answer public questions. I realize there might not have been time to do that between Mondays, but I would still like to see answers to that. I'd like to know if there will need to be a golf course open space vote to be able to move the expanded highway roundabout into the golf course and the parking trails. Most importantly, I'm here again to ask you to begin the EIS process now. Don't wait for more time until after a November election, because whatever that outcome is going to be, should it be the 3-lane or should it be the road, whatever question you guys end up asking, you've been told twice by the federal administration on transportation and CDOT that a supplemental EIS at the very least will be required. We've now spent 16 months since you've been in office, and we still have no safe fire evacuation routes. I'm very concerned about that, especially with the potential 8-year build of a 3-lane. And that's why you should get the EIS going, because if you're going to have to do it, just do it. And the final thought is, as I sat through that meeting last night, I had to think to myself, well, I'm 64 this fall. I'm part of a passing generation. This project is for generations beyond now. And it's whether Aspen continues to manage traffic growth or simply accommodate it. Many of us in the room last night are part of a generation that is passing, and what you're doing is for the future, not for the past. I didn't hear anybody show up who rides the bus, who's a worker, because they all still had an 1.5 to 2-hour ride home. And I did not hear any of the council members talking about our employees or what they needed during that meeting. Excuse me, maybe I shouldn't say council. I didn't hear any of the public comment talking about the people who serve us daily and the thousands and thousands of people who move across that bridge by mass transit daily now. I think that they deserve real consideration in this discussion. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Rachel. Bruce.
Thank you, Mayor, and the rest of the council. My name is Bruce Etkin. I've been a full-time voting resident of Aspen for the past 20 years. And
They want you a little closer to the microphone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sit down. First time public speaking. My name is Bruce Etkin. I've been a full-time voting resident of Aspen for the past 20 years, and I led the Friends of Pandora, which provided the public awareness campaign that won county commissioner support for the expansion of Aspen. For my 3 minutes of fame, I want to discuss the activation of Connor Park, the Armory building, and the proper role of food in these spaces. Activating Connor Park with food trailer restaurants, we propose the city buy 3 food trailer restaurants to be placed in Connor Park by June 1st of this year. These food facilities are fully self-contained, requiring only electric hookup and cost approximately $100,000 each. In addition, we would need to construct a 30 by 60 foot all-weather pavilion and portable restaurants outside until the armory is rebuilt in 3 years. Once completed, the armory building would include new restrooms and eating spaces inside as needed. These food trailers can meet the demand, providing volume that keeps prices low for the community, offering cost-effective, flexible solutions. We believe the 3 trailer restaurants will meet demand, but there is an option to expand to 5 if demand requires this in the future. We would lease these trailers to different vendors who demonstrate a variety of quality food at affordable prices. Vendors will need to keep quality high, cost low, or the leases would not be extended. Initial lease terms would be 3 months. These food trailers would also be a welcome addition to the Saturday market, enhancing the experience and providing food options for our visitors. Number 2, the Armory Building, an arts and cultural center, a community center. We believe the Armory should return to its historic role as an arts and cultural community center. This will allow the Armory to be operated by the Wheeler and will allow the partial use of Wheeler REIT funds, currently $53 million in support of the project. We've read the statute, and if the Wheeler operates the Armory, there may not be a need for a future public vote, but if we did have to have a public vote to expand the statute, I'm quite certain with a proper public awareness campaign, we would be successful. Where Wheeler could finally have flat floors, it needs to expand its mission in the Armory to host dances, plays, roller skating, and aerobics, acrobat shows, and more. The place would serve as a true community hub. Doubling the Armory's size by adding a full underground ballroom basement with 12-foot high ceilings that could also be divided into multi-purpose rooms. Significant rental revenue with different rental rates for for-profit and nonprofit use could be generated to surpass what the food services projected profit margin is. And in comparison, that would bring to the table, no pun intended, expanding the Armory into the alley where fire trucks were once stored, housing ARCRA and the Forest Service's business visitor information centers. We do not need 2 bars serving liquor inside what is one of the city's most valuable assets. The focus should be on food, cultural, community events, keeping this family friendly. We hope you will invite us to the work session for August 19th. We will bring plans, renderings. We believe this addresses all the needs expressed by the community in the surveys and will be a far better solution to the new use of the Armory, with 5 food restaurants, 2 bars, that was presented at the open house on July 31st. The vision not only honors the Armory's historic significance, but it also provides practical, economically viable solutions that benefit the entire community. Let's make the best use of this valuable city asset. And food this summer, not in 3 years from now. Food this summer. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah.
Question for Bruce. Bruce, thanks for all the hard work that you're putting into this. I haven't had a chance to fully dive through everything you sent yesterday or today, but look forward to looking at it. Can I ask, why are you passionate about this project? Why is this something you're interested in?
Well, I have a historical use in this issue. I was the one that provided the public's awareness campaign when the city was considering building the new city hall or expanding in the Armory and going and buying some property from Mark Hunt across the street. And as you recall, we had an advisory ballot, and the community center option was voted on by a majority of the community. And I still believe that it should be a community center and not 5 restaurants and 2 bars. And that's why I'm here today. And I understand from the survey the importance of food, but these 3 food trailers could provide the exact same kitchens as are proposed in the thing. It would provide flexibility for the next 100 years for this historic space. It would expand the space by twice the size it currently is. And it's a win-win, particularly if we can use the RET funds to pay for any overhead or cost that the city does not want to allocate, or the city could allocate their money to something else with that $17 million, and we could use all the RET funds for it. Plus, the museum tent went for a naming opportunity of $17 million. The Jazz Aspen went for a naming opportunity of $10 million. I'm quite certain if you wanted to do a Lewis Ice Arena naming opportunity, it would go for $25 million, or the entire cost to develop this facility. It makes sense and provides affordable, quality food this summer.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Do we still need to meet tomorrow at 1:30?
Are we on for the agenda on Monday?
No, you're not. I'll give you more than 3 minutes tomorrow, though. I'll see you at 1:30.
Thank you.
Are there members of the public for public comment this evening? Tony, come on up.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, my name is Toni Kronberg, and I'd like to give many thanks to the council. As you know, I've been coming to city council meetings for the last 50 years. And this particular council, I'm really impressed with how you managed the discussion on the Castle Creek Bridge last night. I can see that we're taking real steps to coming up with a solution, not only for replacement of the Castle Creek Bridge, but also for the entrance to Aspen. I drove up from Down Valley today. It is incredible, the backup at the roundabout. The traffic was backed up all the way to the hospital, Castle Creek, Maroon Creek, the schools got started. I took photos all the way down. The traffic, 2 lanes is backed up right here, trying to get out of town. And of course, what do I think? My God, if there's a fire, how are we going to get everybody out? We're already at gridlock right now. So what I wanted to segue into that was tonight you have on your consent calendar a discussion with the fire department about a wildfire assessment. And if you could, I would appreciate it if we could have an open house with the community, because I don't think the community is aware of the safe areas to shelter and how to get out of town now. And we still have the dry season coming up in the fall. And I think that would really assuage a lot of the community's fears about how are we going to get out of town. Then the second thing is that you also have on the agenda tonight, it is an action item, the Elected Officials Transportation Committee. And one of the topics is the transportation for bikes and pedestrians at the Airport Business Center and how it's going to be affected by the new lumberyard housing. There's no opportunity for public comment during the action item. The next thing you're going to be doing is going to the EOTC meeting where the 3 jurisdictions are going to meet and discuss these items. But by that point in time, the public is allowed to speak, but you've already made the decision at the local levels. In years past, the public was allowed to comment during this action item. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that tonight that there's not public comment on that. Then the next thing is that last night I was reminded of the nursery rhyme. As you know, I teach kids swimming. The nursery rhyme, the London Bridge is falling down. Well, that could be Aspen. And tonight, in your action item, I'm not sure what the focus of your discussion is, but from last night, it sounds like you're going to focus on the main point of your discussion is the safety of the Castle Creek Bridge. And I applaud you for that, because I really think that does need to be separated out from the entrance to Aspen discussion. There's so many moving parts with that entrance to Aspen discussion. So, as I said last night, for me, in my opinion, the decision should be, are we going to do 2 lanes or 3 lanes? If that bridge is really in dire need of repair and it is getting ready to fall down, we don't have time to do a 3-lane. We only have time to do 2 lanes. You have to repair and rebuild. You don't need any supplemental environmental impact study. You don't need to condemn properties. You don't need any of that stuff. If you're really serious about this bridge falling down, we need to go and repair it now in the 2 lanes. And then last night, Tori has said, of all the council, that you'll take the next step and then try to figure out what to do with the entrance to Aspen. But again, I applaud you because as I said, there's so many moving parts with the entrance. As Jim has mentioned to Ward Hallenstein, you're going to need a vote on enacting the preferred alternative because the voters have not approved bus lanes going across Maralt, nor have they approved the financing for the rail. And I brought tonight, and I apologize I didn't get it sent to you, but I will, the court case that dictates and mandates what needs to be done in order for anything to be done across the Maralt. But thank you for your time tonight. I know that was a lot in 3 minutes, but I think I did it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Other members, Ann?
Ann Mullins, for the record. Recently, I watched a Town of Snowmass Village council meeting, and they received an update on airport operations. I found it really helpful, very informative, and interestingly enough, it kind of painted a picture of a baseline of the conditions at the airport currently that could be very helpful in the future. The presentation was done by Bill Thomas, aviation consultant, and Dan Bartholomew, who is director of Pitkin County Airport, Aspen Pitkin Airport. It took about a half hour. The presentation was a half hour. Then there were subsequent questions by the council, which were really, really great, very, very kind of probing questions by the council. As you guys know, a lot of people watch council meetings and even more follow the council presentations and council discussions really, really closely. I think it would be a great benefit to the citizens of Aspen if council would consider doing a similar update, devote part or all of a work session near future to an update by these two and by Bill and Dan. And that's basically my request to the council. Thank you in advance for your consideration.
Thanks, Ann. Sir, do we have plans for them to come back to us?
I have not scheduled anything. I have not received direction from council.
Okay.
Tori,
Yeah, hey, Ward.
if I may chime in on this,
Sure.
I think that this would be a really important thing for the citizens of Aspen to get update from Bill and Dan. And I think we have an open spot, perhaps on September 9th or someplace in the near future before the November election to get a real update on what's going on there at the airport.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other council members want an update? Would you like those two to come over?
Yeah, that works for me.
Great. All right. We'll talk to him and find out about scheduling.
So was that where you
Yeah, we'd like to. Other members of the public for public comment this evening? Looking online as well? And one more call, public comment this evening. All right, we'll bring it back to council table. Thank you guys very much. We always want to encourage public comment. Please come and join us anytime you can. Sometimes it can be maybe a little intimidating or nerve-wracking, but please, we like everybody to come in and feel welcome here. We appreciate public comment. This is an opportunity for council members' comments. Council members, Ward, since you are away, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I really have no particular comments, but I appreciate the presentations last night and the comments from all the people that were there. It's obvious that it's dear in the hearts of many people, and it's incumbent upon us to move forward with this. The bridges, entrance to Aspen, Castle Creek, in some manner soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Ward. Bill?
Sure. Two quick things. One is on this subject of the airport presentation and work session. So I'm supportive of doing that, but it would be my hope that us as a council could have a consensus position on support or lack thereof for the updated airport layout plan coming out of that work session. I think if we're going to spend our time, given that it's not directly our asset to oversee, then we should make a recommendation to the citizens of Aspen based on the time that we've spent on it. So that would be my hope coming out of that. And number two, I do agree with Tony that our community and our visitors to our community could benefit from better education on what to do if there's an emergency, not to wait until there's an incident commander appointed, and just have something in the back of their mind of this is a safe place or should be a safe place unless I'm told otherwise. So that's something that I'd look forward to is some kind of educational campaign so that we can all be prepared in something that hopefully never happens but could happen.
Sounds good. Sarah, we've been talking about wildfire evacuation and safe spaces and stuff like that for a little while. Last night, I think Carly was talking a little bit about some of the work that we're doing in our staff, but where are we for, and the fire station actually just had an outreach meeting with the public for emergency planning just recently. Is that something that we would want to bring in for a work session update? Is it ready for that? Or would it be a good idea to, if there's video of what happened at the fire station, maybe we could put that on our website and share that with the community? Do you have any direction or advice about how to get more wildfire preparedness information to our community?
I'd encourage people to visit the Pitkin County Safety Council website, which is a consolidated place for that information from all of the agencies. That's also where all the programming opportunities are. It's where HOAs and others can make requests for presentations in their own gatherings, so whether they want to do it as a neighborhood or maybe it's a civic association or something like that. From the city's lens, we have viewed, we initiated this work on evacuation probably 3.5 years ago, maybe even 4, and have been invested in the LIBOR system for some time. Matter of fact, we'll be having a conversation about it during the budget process in October and what level of community access there should be to that modeling data. What I'd suggest for the council here is, again, our public safety agencies are our leads on this, particularly the fire department with support from our police department and Pitkin County Sheriff. I believe they are the most experienced in advising community members. I would say the short advisement is if you're feeling uncomfortable, don't wait. If you're on a pre-evacuation notice and you're uncomfortable, go ahead and leave. That's some of the most critical decision-making that's completely within the power of an individual to make without having to wait until things reach an extreme potential situation in the community. You know, when incident commanders set evacuation and pre-evacuation zones, there's a lot of thought that goes into that, but it is a very fast decision-making process for an incident commander to do that. And I wouldn't want to represent what all those factors are to you. I know what they are from my training, but I'm not the one who's actively exercising that in the field. And I would rather you hear that from one of them. So if you would like Deputy Chief Anderson to come present to you what that looks like for the first few hours before an incident raises to a state level team. So if there's different levels of commanders that come in depending upon the severity of the situation, and that's based upon things like terrain, complexity, fire behavior, assets that are being protected or are able to be let go, things like that in their decision-making process to see what type of team is necessary.
I would be very interested in that.
I think what I'd ultimately love to get is a coordinated outreach effort between the city, the county, the public safety agencies, and you know, I don't know what I don't know here, and I'm getting educated on certain things. Like, I guess there's not a simple answer. It's not just go to the golf course. You know, I think there's a lot of intermediate steps before then, which are great, but perhaps educating the community on this is what will happen if there's a nearby wildfire. These are the various steps that could occur, and this is where you will get information from. I don't know what that website is that you referenced, Sarah. I can't find it with a Google search, but
Pickinwildfire.com is one, and then the Aspen Fire Department, clicking on wildfire
Yeah,
mitigation.
I forgot the Safety Council changed the name of the one. What they are versus what their web address is two separate things. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
So let me make a specific request here and see what others think of this. I would love the city to help spearhead a interdepartmental, intergovernmental educational campaign for our community and for visitors to our community and workers in our community, so that if it happens, we're prepared for how to find information, what the series of steps might be. I guess I'm not expecting black and white answers anymore, which is okay, but, you know, God forbid this happens, where am I supposed to look to for information? How am I going to get alerted? How am I going to make sure that I can protect myself and my family?
Okay,
So I'm just, because we have the community watching, I do want to clarify that again, that it's pickinwildfire.com. And this is the coordinated effort that you're requesting. This multi-agency group has been together for a number of years. It talks about what current fire conditions are, what you can do to plan as an individual and for your family and for your business, as well as how to sign up for emergency notifications, because this website is absolutely not where you're going to go in an active emergency. You will be directed by the incident commander to specific information resources. The most prominent one you can sign up for today is Picken County Alerts for this purpose, which will most likely be one of the most used. We have another technology that we use as well, that we will set up zones, and we will hit every cell phone that hits a cell tower in that zone. And that's, we have to use that technology 2 or 3 times a year already as we're dealing with issues here in the community. So an example would be a lost or endangered child, of which we've used that technology for. So I want to encourage you again to be familiar with the information for preparing on this site. It lets you know how you can get support for wildfire risk assessment. And again, we continue to partner, but we are not the lead agency on wildfire. We are a support agency on it, because we are not the ones who are the experts in creating the appropriate defensible space when an emergency occurs. We will continue to provide that support function around evacuation, traffic management, and facilitation of resources through traffic in and out of the community.
Fair enough to all that, Sarah, but you know, the fact that I've never heard of this website is proof that whoever's responsible for it, I don't know if this is under Picken County's direct oversight, it just isn't doing a good enough job disseminating the information. So what can we do to enhance that? Can we prominently feature this on the City of Aspen website? Can we put some posters up around town? You know, what more can we do to help disseminate this information?
Sure, we'll
That's
ask
what I'm
them what assistance they would like. I mean, it's really in their court to tell us what assistance they would like.
I'll get with Jake. We'll talk about everything that you were just bringing up and get his input on bringing that to the public, or bringing it at least to us to start.
And I'd encourage you to contact the sheriff as the lead entity.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's it for me.
Thank you. Other council comments tonight? Sam, none?
None for me tonight. Actually, I would like to point out that the extensive rain we've had lately has kept the smoke down, and it's nice to not be worried about forest fires this summer, so far.
Thanks, John. Ward, I see a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I really support the work session on the wildfire. I think it'll raise the community's comfort level a lot to know how much has been going on that they may not be aware of. The degree of cooperation between the different agencies up and down the valley and throughout the state So I think that, you know, Bill says that he wasn't aware of it, and I'm sure that's the case for many people, but that doesn't mean that there haven't been people working tirelessly for a long, long time to ensure the safety of our community. So a work session or whatever Jake feels is required, I'm fully supportive of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ward.
Just so I'm clear, who's Jake?
Jake is the Assistant Fire Chief, and he's been heading up a lot of this area of the fire department's coverage.
Perfect, thanks.
I spoke here last night.
Got it.
Quick announcement from me. I've been asked to share there are 2 community events going on this week. Tomorrow, August 14th, 11 to 1, there is an ice cream social. That's with the Aspen Police Department. And then the community picnic is this Sunday, August 18th, from 1 to 3 p.m., also in Wagner Park. New to the picnic this year is there is a talent show portion. Not necessarily a competition, but just an opportunity for community to share talents. This talent show is going to begin at 2 p.m. Food and beverages will be served. There's enough food for at least for 750 attendees. So please come on over. We want to really get the community together. This is all about just breaking bread, meeting your neighbor, saying hello, and finding out what hidden talents your neighbors may have. We'll see you Sunday, August 18th. John.
I did forget to mention that CoA, the Community Office of Resource Efficiency, is having its Buttermilk Bash tomorrow from 4 to 6 at Buttermilk. The ski company will be showcasing their new all-electric building. It'll be a good opportunity to learn what CoA is and what it does for our community. Over 200 people are signed up to be there, and there will be food and drink. Again, tomorrow, 4 to 6 at the base of Buttermilk. Hope to see you there.
Thanks, John. Agenda amendments.
There was a discussion about moving Resolution 78 as an action item. That would be up to council.
78, guys, is on our consent calendar. Did anybody need further discussion on that? If we do, we can move it to action items.
Not me.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and leave that there, if that's okay. City manager's comments this evening? And quick board reports.
Just have one. APSHA was canceled last week because we didn't have enough people for a quorum. But I attended 2 VI.A meetings. One was put on by Tim Miller from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Very interesting stuff. The average diversion from VI.A Reservoir is 56,000 acre feet a year. The record was in 2014 at 80,000 feet. And so far this year, we're at 67.5. So things are looking pretty good at VI.A. We also had a meeting the following day, talked about the 15-mile reach and what the cameo call means to support fish in the 15-mile reach between the Palisades Roller Dam and the confluence with the Gunnison River. There are 4 endangered fish down there. Actually, 2 have been reclassified as merely threatened because of the success of the program. We also talked quite a bit about the Frying Pan River, anchor ice studies, environmental flow considerations, and Didymo studies, which is a nuisance species. Been told to remind people, not only do you need to clean your boats to make sure that they don't transport mussels from bodies of water that have them into Colorado, but also clean your waders when you're done fishing. That's going to help our rivers out as well. Let's see, we do have a quagga mussel issue with, I think they're called veligers, or microscopic quagga mussel larvae that have been discovered in moving water, which was never expected before. They've always just been found in lakes and still bodies of water, so that's a huge concern. Still being very diligent about mussel inspections. Let's see, This is our 4th year of anchor ice study, 7 sites looked at twice a week, December through March. So that's 200 times per winter. And when we have a mild winter, we have mild temps and higher flows, which equals lower levels of anchor ice. I think I wrote that down correctly. Anyway, that was our WAPA meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. RAFTA met last week. Ratified and approved a couple of different plans, adoption of a zero-emission fleet transition plan, climate action plan, and strategic plan going forward. Some other small things like planning initiatives and budget assumptions for our 2025 budget, and some first and last mile mobility services, discussion around both the grant awards that were going out to support community efforts in first and last mile mobility, as well as RAFTA's role, and a conversation around RAFTA's role when it comes to those services. Anything else you wanted to add on that? And Ward is in Maine right now, everybody, so hopefully he's not attending any board meetings while he's there. With that, we can move to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda this evening is resolution number 78, the Guerdon settlement, resolution number 86, wildfire hazard assessment IGA, resolution 89, water treatment facility campus improvements, final design, resolution number 93, Armory Hall programming direction related to ACRA and the visitor space, resolution number 97, calling for and establishing the date for the coordinated election and authorizing the city clerk to execute the IGA with Pitkin County. We also have the draft of the minutes of July 23rd. Are there any items on the consent calendar that anybody wishes to pull for further discussion?
89, please.
89.
93.
And 93. 89 is the water treatment facility campus improvements final design.
Thanks, guys. Super supportive of upgrading that facility. It was interesting to tour it and see quite how dated it is. My question is, what seems like a pretty large and juicy scope of design work only solicited one bidder. Why?
Well, good evening. My name is Ryan Laybach. I'm a project manager with the Utilities Department. Thanks for having us up here. You know, we had 4 people show up to a pre-bid. And of those folks that attended that pre-bid, Garver was the lone bidder. And there were 3 other companies. One was SGM out of Glenwood Springs. The other 2 are out of the Front Range. And at that time, they elected not to provide a proposal on the work, either due to workload, or that was basically the answers that were given to us.
And when was that bidding process conducted?
That was last June.
Do you think the results would be different if you rebid it now?
You know, I would prefer not to rebid it, and that we've had a lot of work with Garver to date for them to get familiar with our plant, get to know our operating staff, and to understand where we need to go for the future and how to design where we want to be. You know, if we did go out to bid again, I think we probably get some additional bidders that could come and give us some answers, but I prefer to stay with Garver. You know, that being said, you know, that's the way we'd like to go.
Is Garver's bid amount generally what you were expecting, or was it a, oh my God moment, that's a lot of money?
No, we've had known that they were at about that order of magnitude with the original proposal. With schematic design, we contracted for that amount. We had in the memo around $800,000. And at that time, we knew around about the same amount of money that we would spend currently for future design. You know, as we went through that schematic design, obviously there's some new things that were discovered that we needed to take care of, and that increased the scope a tiny bit, as well as the fee commensurate with that scope. And I think it's very much in line with where we're at. You know, the cost estimates that we have to date are, you know, $51 million of total planned capital improvements. And their bid, or excuse me, their dollar amount that they've proposed is 5% of that. I would expect 10%. I think it's a very good proposal where it sits.
Great. Thanks for all your answers. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Any other questions on this item?
No.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Resolution number 93, the Armory Hall programming related to ACRA. Sam?
Yeah, well, first I just wanted to add one question over there, but I wanted to turn to council, and none of you brought it up, I guess, but maybe you would have. Just being like, you guys are good with this? Visitor Center and the Armory, up to 1,000 square feet. I just wanted to make sure it was discussed, since it's, I didn't want to pigeonhole ourselves, I guess. And the one, before you answer, I guess then the one question I had for Jen is, can this, the scope of this, can this be the side shed, like where the parking lot is now, or does it have to be within the building confines if we approve something like this?
So the resolution does say site, so it does not say within the building footprint.
Okay.
So I think it gives you some flexibility. You do have a work session on Monday, so you can actually ask the consultants more pointed questions on constraints and opportunities of the site, in their opinion. So that's another area that, time that you can get more information on where you most likely would like to see ACRA located.
Yeah, and I generally agree with this, but I was speaking to the consultants when I was there on July 31st, and their plans did not necessarily include an ACRA Visitor Center, so it might cause them to have to redraw some things, and I'm just concerned about that in approving this tonight. I want to get things moving along, but I also wonder if we should know what they would have to move around rather than approve this and then find out that.
So I don't want to speak for the city manager, but we did bring this back to you as requested. We said we'd bring it back at the next meeting, which is tonight. The other option you could do is hold off on adopting this, and I think we're going to need some clear direction overall on the Armory next Monday, and we would need to bring another resolution back, so you could incorporate it in that if that's a preferred route.
I hate to delay, but if it's not a significant nuisance, I do feel like we probably should wait until we have that work session to memorialize this.
Makes sense.
But I don't feel, I want to hear from the rest of the council. This is not like I feel incredibly strongly about it.
I can support that. You know, I do support, the language that we put in here was that there's support for a visitor center, and it says up to 1,000 square feet. So there's no minimum. So I'm comfortable with this, but I could also, I could vote for a motion that leaves this off of our consent calendar and continues it, or whatever would be best. It really doesn't matter to me.
Then I just go back to Jen and Sarah and just be like, is it that big a deal to push this into the next regular meeting after our work session on the Armory?
Everyone's looking at me. You know, it is your choice. My view of it is that the sooner I have clarity to give direction to the design team, the better product I can bring you. And at this point, it's not going to make a change because the materials for next week are already in my queue, and I've been looking at some of it. So, you know, this is something, though, we are really to the wire, in my opinion, if you want that project to move forward timely, that you need to get programming finalized. So that we are not redesigning things when it gets really expensive to redesign things. Right now is your chance to massage and contemplate. So we'll do whatever you prefer. We were, though, just following through on our commitment that it would be on your next regularly scheduled agenda.
Okay, so if it's not that big a deal, then I would say let's put it on the next regular scheduled agenda meeting and talk about it on Monday, just before you memorialize something that could create change. It doesn't sound like it would be a massive delay.
Works for me.
Since it's on the agenda, I would suggest that you move to continue Resolution 93 until August 27th.
Go ahead.
All right, I move to continue Resolution 93 until, what do you say, August 27th?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote for the continuance?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. Thanks.
I'll move to adopt the rest of the consent calendar with the exception of Resolution 93.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Do we have a roll call vote for the consent calendar?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. This will bring us to first reading of ordinances this evening. The first one is ordinance number 8. This is proposed ballot questions for November 5th. And I could take a motion to read.
I'll make a motion to read ordinance number 8.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? We have a roll call vote for reading of ordinance number 8.
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes.
And ordinance number 8, series of 2024, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Aspen, Colorado, amending section 23.48.070 of the municipal code to extend the expiration date of the affordable housing real estate transfer tax from December 31st, 2040 to December 31st, 2060, amending section 23.32.060 of the municipal code to extend the expiration date of the affordable housing and daycare .45 sales tax from December 31st, 2040 to December 31st, 2060, and establishing and submitting to the electorate of the City of Aspen certain questions at the November 5th, 2024 election.
Mr. Mayor, Council, basically the title explains the majority of this ordinance. Essentially, this was a conversation through multiple meetings with the council to basically provide community flexibility for future funding for the lumberyard project, if indeed that moves forward. This just basically opens the door for issuing a longer debt issuance if the council and the community supported going out for debt to add to some of the resources for that project.
Any requests for information on second reading? Take a motion to approve on first reading.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 8, series of 2024.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote, please, for ordinance number 8 on first reading?
Counselor Doyle? Yes. Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. Ordinance number 9, proposed ballot questions for November 5th, and this is pertaining to taxation of automotive vehicle sales and use.
I'll make a motion to read ordinance 9, series of 24.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion. Could we have a roll call vote for reading of ordinance number 9, please?
Counselor Doyle? Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes.
Ordinance number 9, series of 2024, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Aspen, Colorado, amending sections of the municipal code pertaining to the taxation of motor vehicle sales and establishing and submitting to the electorate of the City of Aspen at the November 5th, 2024 election, a question to authorize the application of a use tax on automotive vehicle sales and use.
This second ordinance is, again, another tax question. This is actually a little bit of standardization with the rest of the state and applying a use tax instead of a sales tax to the sale of motor vehicles. We are currently the sole outlier kind of on this taxation policy. So this would add some uniformity with the rest of the state on tax collections. This is also one of those really rare moments where we're actually asking to tax less because the tax rate would go down from 2.4 to 2.1% on future sales.
Let's make that less rare.
Thank you very much.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance number 9, series of 2024.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote, please, about ordinance number 9 on first reading?
Counselor Doyle? Yes. Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. The next one is ordinance number 13. This is 120 East Main, Aspen Modern Historic Designation and Benefits.
I'll make a motion to read ordinance number 13, series of 2024.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion. Could we have a roll call vote for reading of ordinance number 13, please?
Counselor Doyle? Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yay.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes.
Ordinance 13, series of 2024, an ordinance of the Aspen City Council approving Aspen Modern Historic Designation and Benefits, conceptual major development, transferable development rights, major subdivision, plan development, project review, special review, and growth management review for the property located at 120 East Main Street, legally described as the easterly 20 feet of Lot M, all of lots N and O, Block 66, and the southerly 10 feet of the vacated alley through the block adjacent and contiguous to said lots N and O, and the easterly 20 feet of Lot M, Block 66, County of Pitkin, State of Colorado, and Parcel B, Lot 2, U.S. West Subdivision, according to the plat thereof recorded July 13th, 1993, in Plat Book 32 at page 11, County of Pitkin, State of Colorado.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. For the record, Ben Anderson, Community Development Director. I'm here tonight presenting on behalf of Kevin Reyes, who's online, I believe. And before I get into the presentation, I did just want to acknowledge Kevin. He has taken a new opportunity with the City of Glenwood Springs. He's been with us for 6 years and has done some really great work in the development review process, most recently and most importantly, getting the lumberyard process through our entitlement review. So I just wanted to wish Kevin good luck and to thank him for his time with the city. He's been a very important member of our team. With that, I want to get into Ordinance 13. For first reading, I have just a brief presentation. At second reading, we'll have a full staff presentation around review criteria and certainly the applicant presentation for your full consideration. But I did want to just explain some of the basics of this project this evening and make sure that we were all on the same page in terms of what you were considering. This is a fairly significant and complex project in terms of the elements of the land use code that this project touches. Ultimately, we're asking for your consideration of designation and associated benefits per the Aspen Modern designation program. Conceptual major development, although there's not very much significant proposed in terms of changes to the proposed resource itself. But there are significant land use reviews that are associated with this, most notably plan development, which provides flexibility for some of the things that are being asked for in the designation and the related benefits. We will talk much more about those things at second reading. But ultimately, this is about Aspen Modern designation of a really important building in town that I think staff is very excited to consider this proposal. Just because I think it's an iconic building to our Main Street corridor. It has connection to some very important designers who have contributed mightily to what Aspen looks like today, served importantly as the Pitkin County Library, and is a building that for a long time has been on our desired list for the Aspen Modern program. This is the site. To the right is the Sardi House. This property is complicated by its composition of two lots through a relatively complicated land use history going back over the years, but essentially these two lots would be brought together for the proposal that you'll be considering. Staff is really supportive of this project from the land use code perspective, certainly in pursuit of designation. But in designation outcomes, there is a negotiation process for benefits, and the applicants have proposed a package of benefits, and I do believe that this is at second reading where council's discussion is going to be, because I think for the most part staff is very supportive of the proposal. Otherwise, ultimately the big asks are a generation of 10 TDRs from the designated commercial building, and the allowance of a development of 2 market rate residences at the rear of the property. And that kind of what composes of that lot 2 that I showed on the previous slide. There's some other topics here, but I think really the 2 big ones for council consideration. And likewise, they were the 2 topics that I think were most important to the Historic Preservation Commission's consideration of this proposal a couple of weeks ago. There are 3 draft ordinances within your packet. We didn't do this to confuse you, but just as we get into the conversation at second reading, to give a little bit of direction to what the final ordinance might be. The first is option 1. It reflects the applicant's benefit requests. The second reflects staff's recommendation that was presented additionally to HPC. And then following HPC's recommendation, they navigated the applicant's request and staff's recommendation and landed on a resolution of recommendation to you that supported some of the things that the applicant requested and also acknowledged some of the questions that staff had about the application. We'll be certainly ready to help council navigate these options at second reading as you folks discuss the proposal. So tonight we recommend approval of Ordinance 13 Series of 2024 on first reading. Second reading is scheduled as a public hearing at the August 27th regular meeting, and certainly would be happy to take any questions tonight that either staff or the applicant can answer at second reading.
Bill, and then Sam.
Thanks, Ben. Could you flip back to your site plan? I have a bunch of questions, but I think graphically want to make sure that I'm reminded of them. Number 1, Lot 2 does not front Bleecker Street, correct?
It does not.
Okay, and generally the area of Lot 2 is where the residential is proposed, is that correct? Okay. I want to have more information and conversation about that. Are there any other examples of residential units not fronting a street in the city of Aspen? I don't know.
In many places, but we can bring some examples.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're not setting some strange precedent there. Number 2, is there any development proposed on the portion that's vacated alley?
No.
No.
That
That'll be
holds.
the vehicular and pedestrian access.
On top of it being a vacated alley, there's an important utilities easement that crosses that, and so in the proposed project, that area is essential for vehicular access and movement around the property.
Great. I'd like to hear the applicant speak about free market versus affordable, whether affordable is a tenable concept to them or not. I'm not sure whether that's a suggestion by staff or was something volunteered by them at any point, so I'd like to hear their perspective there, whether this project's doable, tenable with affordable or not. It'd be super helpful for me to have a basic chart of how the 3 different benefit packages compare to one another, staff, applicant, and HPC. Could you quickly flip back through the slides to make sure I'm not missing anything that I just thought of?
I did not go as far back as the list of reviews that were necessary, if that would be helpful.
No, I think the rest are details. I think those were my, oh, last one, thank you. We do not, please confirm this is accurate, we do not have any version of the TDR program whereby we transfer commercial development rights. We only have residential floor area transference rights. Is that correct?
It's generally correct. It's a little murky on Main Street where we have former residences that served as commercial buildings and then sort of were brought into the program, or TDRs were severed from them. But in general, the whole TDR program and just the proportions and the amount that were able to be severed and the allowable floor area that's on a property that's residential versus commercial or some other use, those proportions are set up for residential uses. And so, I think one of staff's concerns is exactly that, is we haven't seen a building from my understanding and looking back over the history of the program, where you've got a building that was designed as a commercial building as opposed to a residence that spun off TDRs. To my knowledge, there might be an exception out there in the program's past, but I would say 95% of the projects that have gone through the TDR program have been residential.
Cool. And for perfect clarity, there's no alternate mechanism to shift commercial square footage development rights from one property to another in our land use code, right?
That is correct.
Thanks.
Sam and then John.
Yeah, I was wondering how much of this is like a negotiation? Like as we go through it, whether it be 10 or 5 TDRs, like does this mean we risk them not designated Aspen Modern or something like that? So like, what are we dealing with here?
In my understanding, it is fully intended to be a negotiation. And I think it's ultimately up to council to weigh the benefits of the designation to the community versus the benefits that are being granted. And, we've done a few of these in recent years. And, I think it's been exactly, it's been very true to the term negotiation. They've looked differently from one property to the next. I think often there is a sort of a frame of the kinds of benefits that are granted to historic properties, sort of stated very clearly in the code. But there's a couple asks here that, one, if we were to grant them, would clearly require the plan development to kind of grant that flexibility for that sort of negotiated outcome. And two, there are things that are either not currently allowed in the zone district or, per the topic on commercial TDR generation, sort of outside of that.
Got it. Thank you. And so can we expect a negotiation come second reading?
I would expect the navigation of those kind of 3 options in the 3 ordinances to be the heart of your conversation, likely.
Like the applicant will be there with their representative talking about okay.
Absolutely.
And I guess everything seemed relatively not normal, clear, except for everything actually seemed murky between some HPC things, but the HPC seemed to be okay with the 10 TDRs, but staff recommends 5, and at least for second reading, I'd love to know what that discussion was like and why HPC settled upon 10.
Yeah, I think in general, the HPC is very supportive of the TDR program. I think several members have been present for other TDR generation approvals on Main Street, and I think ultimately, are very much desiring this as a designated property, and saw a lot of value and importance in that, if I can summarize that discussion. But we can certainly bring back kind of a summary of the minutes from that part of the conversation with HPC.
And if I'm reading this correctly, that seemed to be the only like unanimous negotiating spot where they were like 10 yes, all said yes, and everyone else was in between on others?
Yeah, I mean, I think several of the other requests are related to the request, particularly for the market rate residences in the rear, and I think that was a place where HPC, I think because of recent land use code changes that have been approved at the council table, I think that they were particularly on that topic, wanting this body to make a decision about that, and it wasn't a unanimous perspective on the board, but several of these other topics, I think, are related to that fundamental question. And I would say that one, and then the discussion around fees were some topics that I think HPC was unwilling to land on a formal recommendation.
Wonderful. Thank you for all that information. I look forward to second reading. So,
Thanks, Sam. John?
Yeah, I'm looking at the last bullet point, the 6-month recession period for the designation. What would trigger the loss of the designation?
Well, and the applicant can speak to this next week, and I'll just explain to you what the general concept is that, following an approval of an ordinance that designated the property, that condition would allow them a period of time to finalize that designation and the other aspects of the approval. And so it's sort of a testing period for the concept and what they've gotten out of the approvals. And so that's typically not the case. Once we pass an ordinance with you on a land use case, it goes into effect within 30 days. And that is then in effect unless somebody withdraws. But in this case, it kind of builds into the approval some ability to not have the designation go through should there be other desires to do something else with the property.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, John. I had, my questions will be around the 10 TDRs and the linkage between them and the installment payments upon when they sell, stuff like that. And Ward, you have some requests for second reading?
Yeah, one clarification on what HVC allows for internal modifications and particularly windows that face Main Street.
As is proposed in this, at this level of the approval, so this is like concept approval for HPC. In terms of the details of the project, there's a kind of a next step in HPC approvals that look at the details of a project. But in general, at this point, there are not significant changes proposed to, the building on the property, the former library building, former design workshop building. Obviously, inside the building, unless it has impacts to the exterior of the building in terms of needing to change windows or fenestration to acknowledge level changes in the building, it's interior things are not typically under HPC's jurisdiction. Unless it has sort of exterior facing consequences, and certainly the fenestration facing Main Street would be a topic of significant interest for HPC should any kind of modifications or changes be proposed.
Ben, I'd like to know historically how those windows looked when the building was first erected, and if those windows are different than they are now.
The applicant in their presentation to HPC had some really great photos at different stages of the building's history, so we can certainly try to provide detail on that.
Thank you.
If there's no more requests for information at second reading, I could take a motion to approve ordinance number 13 on first reading.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 13, series of 2024 on first reading.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote for ordinance number 13 on first reading, please?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. We'll see you on the 27th.
And Sam, the applicant did hear all of your questions and inquiries because they are here now.
I saw someone nodding, and I assume so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That will bring us on our agenda down to ordinance number 10. This is a municipal code revision regarding leashes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Are you ready for us?
Absolutely.
Great. My name's Matt Kuhn. I'm the Parks and Open Space Director. I'm joined here tonight with John Spees, our Senior Open Space and Natural Resource Manager. We're starting tonight with ordinance number 10, which is updates to the municipal code as it relates to leashes in our community. Just as a quick reminder, we touched on this in first reading, but I wanted to highlight this. This code was last updated in 1973. The majority of the code was written in 1962, 60 years ago. Aspen was a vastly different place at that time, and really what it strived to do at that point, from my understanding, is to kind of rein in the dogs at large issue that was occurring. Therefore, the current code states that within Aspen, all limits of the city of Aspen leashes are required. What we know at this point is that that's not how Aspen functions, and to a great extent we see how the community is functioning with dogs and their owners functioning very well in the community. And so the goal of this effort was to update our code and align it to what we're seeing and make sure that we're all moving forward on the same front. So with that, I'll hand it to John for a short presentation on the nuts and bolts of this.
All right, apologies for the mask. To start out, we want to talk about what the goal is here. We want to align the current use patterns with the city code and provide clarity to the Aspen community about where it is appropriate for off-leash play with dogs. In red on the screen, you can see the proposed changes. Number one at the top is the big one. Subsection of this section shall not apply if the dog is within an Aspen City Park or open space and meets the following conditions. So essentially what that is saying is that off-leash play will be allowed within city parks and open spaces within these conditions. Dog is actively being supervised and can be verbally controlled. Owner or possessor has a leash in their possession. Dog's play does not interfere with the public enjoyment, safety of the space. They don't enter trails, playgrounds, wetland habitat, artificial turf, or other areas signed as leash required. And then finally, the dog's play does not enter areas in active use by organized programs, park rental, recreational use, or athletic event. Continuing on here, a couple of notes. We did make a change to the length of the leash to 6 feet. This is to have some symmetry with Pitkin County, which has that same requirement. A person may be in direct control of no more than 3 dogs. Dogs must be leashed on trails, sidewalks, streets, and within the pedestrian mall. And then finally, off-leash play is not allowed in the Yellow Brick Park, John Denver Sanctuary, or Heron Park from 9 a.m. until dusk. Those are the highlights. A couple of questions that came from first reading. Why was Heron Park not included as an off-leash play area? I think there's a couple of important points here. One, Heron Park is one of the most frequently used parks within Aspen by kids and families, if not our highest use park per square foot. When we performed some outreach and discussed these proposed code changes with our Open Space and Trails Board, we decided on this compromise approach as a preferred solution, which would allow children and dogs to enjoy the park. And then by allowing off-leash play before 9 a.m., the code aims to to still provide some of that service for dogs. But it also recognizes that following 9 a.m. in the summer, this park is crowded, and there are kids and there are families. And in particular, we feel like there's a safety issue here that could arise. quick differentiation between wetlands and riparian areas. In general, a wetland area is where water is close to or at the surface year-round. We have several that we can point to: Maroon Creek Wetlands, Jenny Adair, and Proctor Open Space. This is sensitive habitat is really what it comes down to. Some of this does serve as stormwater treatment, and it's generally not conducive to off-leash play. On the riparian side, Roaring Fork River Corridor, this is where we're transitioning from, a river corridor to an upland, and there are multiple, 2 miles, Matt, of river frontage within the city of Aspen. And then finally, Wagner Park. Dare I say, the most popular place to take your dog in Aspen. At the end of the day, this really does not affect the use at Wagner Park. What we do want to focus on is, voice control within the park and keeping dogs out of the playground. Also, a big concern is as dogs leave Wagner Park, they are leashed so that as they enter the pedestrian mall, they're under control, or as they enter the sidewalks and trails. Those were the questions during our first reading. Happy to entertain more.
Bill?
We had one question from a citizen via email this morning about John Denver Sanctuary and a specific area within John Denver Sanctuary, which I can't recall. Maybe you guys saw this email too, but could we talk about that for a moment, please?
We can. The question came in about off-leash play in the water at John Denver Sanctuary. Specifically, we responded to that citizen. In the course of these discussions with the Open Space and Trails Board and amongst staff, we really identified that John Denver Sanctuary is a quiet and contemplative space, and that we felt that off-leash play has the potential to be in conflict with that tenant. It goes without saying that there are a variety of uses that occur in John Denver Sanctuary, and some of those might not be quiet and contemplative at all times. But when you look at the broad portfolio of our park system, we really want to strive to maintain that quiet, contemplative space and environment within the sanctuary. We've got, as John mentioned, a variety of parks, a variety of water frontage throughout town, in the downtown core, and throughout all reaches of the city of Aspen. And while there might be some impacts felt by some that go in there, we do think that's important to maintain that as a leashed area. With that said, dogs are absolutely allowed and invited into those spaces on leash. So having your dog cool off in that space is totally acceptable and can step in. It's just we're trying to prevent the fetch, splashing, and kind of lack of control that can occur in that area.
Makes sense. Without having a map of the exact extent of what is John Denver Sanctuary in front of us, are there portions, particularly the portion that's right up against the Roaring Fork? Like, would it be more appropriate for dogs to be off leash in that section if they're going into the Roaring Fork? May not always be a good idea, but when the water flow is lower, might be okay. Is that something we should be considering? I certainly agree and understand with your point, like the more uphill parts that are really with the stone paths and everything that's so beautiful and tranquil. I totally get it, but maybe that dirt path that's right along the Roaring Fork is different. Did you contemplate that? I don't know.
We did, and that is a trail. Pardon me. That dirt path is, perceived as a trail. So if you look at this code change that we're proposing, dogs would be leashed on a trail. That is, while it is kind of this dirt gathering area, that is the center of the song garden. Most of the John Denver engraved songs are in that space. And, when you think back to that quiet and contemplative tenant, I think it's important for us to try to culture that as much as possible. It's a relatively small area we're talking about. So it's from the Cragian Bridge to that entrance trail that comes from behind the recycle center. So there's a lot of land upstream towards Heron Park and the Newberry Park zone that can be accessed. Downstream, you can cross Cragian Bridge, go across towards the old art museum. There's access along that section of the river. And then down further where Jenny Adair Wetlands interfaces with the Rio Grande Trail, there's portions of the Roaring Fork that folks can get down to the river level right there.
Thanks.
I can
No.
wait until public
Public
comment.
comment.
Comments though. Don't we need to do public comment first?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll make my questions after that, if that's okay.
Great. This is a public hearing, so I'll open it up for public comment. Is there any members of the public that wish to comment this evening on ordinance number 10? Please come on up. No, it's red. Push the button. Up top, keep going up. To the right. Up there, there you go, yeah. Click on attendees. Oh, I see it, thank you. Yes, thanks. Hi.
Hi, thanks, Mayor Tory and Council. I'm Chris McKelvey. I'm a resident and professional dog trainer of 44 years. I respect and I'm listening to, I've read everything, and I am here to strongly oppose to allowing more parks and open spaces to be off-leash legal and running at large with the limited restrictions you've proposed. The problems I witness and encounter on a daily basis is off-leash dogs approaching, jumping, assaulting, and interfering with leashed or verbally controlled dogs, their walkers, the bikers, the senior wanting to walk their leash dog, the family wanting to play with their child and dog and not have a loose dog jump on them, eat their food, not to mention the aggressor. It is socially inappropriate for an off-leash dog's handler, owner, to yell from a distance, "It's okay, he's friendly." It's not okay. It represents the owner who has no control over his off-leash dog, and thus he cannot stop his dog from approaching, so friendly is okay with everybody, and it's not. Even with the existing leash laws, off-leash parks, there are daily issues. The dogs are not under voice control. They leave those parks and they enter into spaces like the mall, the Rio Grande Trail, which is supposed to be 42 miles of a leash law. If you enter Heron Park wanting to bike, walk down the Rio Grande with or without a leash dog, it is a gauntlet of off-leash dogs invading personal space. From the time you enter Heron Park, pass by Newberry Park, pass by or go through the John Denver Sanctuary, Theater Aspen, or the Chamber Resort Association, it is a constant flow of off-leash and out-of-control dogs. Dogs are turned off-leash at Paradise Bakery and the Wheeler Opera House and allowed to run through the mall to get to Wagner Park. But this is okay and overlooked because Aspen is seen as a dog-friendly city, which is synonymous with let your dog go free anytime, anywhere, while Born Free is being played in the background. And only a certain age people understand that one. I have many clients who have reactive dogs, dominant dogs, even aggressive dogs. They are learning how to appropriately handle their dogs in all situations. However, when off-leash dogs are allowed to inappropriately approach these dogs and their people without permission, it becomes for a bad encounter, and those owners report back, "I don't like to go into Aspen or their parks because there are so many loose dogs." This proposal has not mentioned anything about allowing these same freedoms to the unneutered males or the females in estrus. If you're determined to have more off-leash dogs, expect more problems. I'm all for training, obviously, not more canine chaos. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Other members of the public that wish to comment this evening on ordinance number 10? Tony?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Tony Kronberg, and what I'd like to do is maybe we could come up with a solution for the dogs that are not so friendly and that are aggressive and that run up to other dogs. We don't have anywhere in Aspen where we have a fenced-in area where those type of dogs can run free. Down in Crown Mountain Park, they have it, but Salt's got an enclosed area. I'm not sure if Snowmass does, but with all the different parks that we have, that might be a good solution, is to have an area in one of the parks where people who have aggressive dogs or dominant dogs or not so friendly dogs, that they can bring their dogs to the enclosed fenced-in area. And then I just want to reiterate, I almost had my arm taken off by a dog a couple years ago. I have a scar and my arm was hanging down. It was up at Independence Pass, a difficult campground. So I definitely have experienced the fear and trauma of having a dog that was not so friendly come up to my dog and they got into a fight, and then I put my arm around to pull my dog back, and my arm right here got, as they said, basically severed. It was like hanging like this. But anyway, I just wanted to just share that with you, that not all dogs are really friendly, and Chris brought up a good point, but I definitely understand that I'm a dog owner. I've got 6 little Yorkies, and God forbid I could never let them go off leash because they'd be just gone every which way. But a solution that's been proposed, I think 2 or 3 councils before your council, as I said, is to have a fenced-in area in one of the parks. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Tony.
Dog run.
Cage match.
Hi, I see Beth Newhoff.
Hi, thank you so much, guys. I tried to get down there, but I'm an Aspen resident. I actually have one of those dogs that can be difficult to control. I always have him on leash. We lived at the top of Mill Street, and I can tell you dogs come running up from Wagner Park completely out of control. They have nobody watching them. The person's down at the bottom of the street. And I guess my concern is we have a hard time with enforcement now, even with people who are leashing their dogs. Today I was downtown. I saw 2 dogs about 30 feet in front of their owners crossing Main Street. So I know we have a problem now, and I feel like increasing this and giving people more rights, which I'm a dog owner. I have one super friendly, one not so friendly. I just think we need to think very hard about making sure we have what we've got policed before we give more rights to dogs and their owners. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Sam.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off by going from what their comments were, asking, what do you believe this ordinance really changes on the ground? What are the expectations? Or like, what does success look like, and what does this change on the ground really?
That's a good question.
Gotcha.
So, number one, we're not just doing this because we like process and code updates.
Yeah.
These code changes kind of enable our rangers to better manage this. Right now, as we highlighted in that first reading, we have a brochure that we've been using for about 20 years that talks about watchful off-leash play. But ultimately, with that blanket wall-to-wall code, it takes and makes some challenges for our rangers to enforce that. So, number one, this is cleaning up and really giving our rangers the tools to have these conversations, to work with folks, and make sure there's compliance. 2, I do think that there's elements of this code, especially those elements around the Yellow Brick and Heron Park, that aim to reduce conflict. And these are 2 places where we have our highest, most visited, used playgrounds. And while on a good day, everything functions beautifully in the chaos at Heron Park, there's also been instances where kids are knocked over and there's dog waste that we have to manage. And all of those things that come with these 2 uses in this small space. So we hope that by making these changes in a few spaces, that we're going to alleviate some conflict and maybe mitigate some challenges in the future. Beyond that, it also really provides some guidance to the community about what appropriate dog behavior and ownership should look like. And these examples that got brought up about Wagner Park or other places where dogs are running well ahead of their owners, we've all seen that in this community. And we hope that by having this new code adopted, our rangers and our staff and working with the communications team, we can have outreach and talk about this in a very formalized way.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and yeah, I think it's very well intended. I did want to ask about enforcement, and if it's sort of the enforcement where if it's a problem it's enforced, or if it's going to be like, oh, I see a dog off a leash, so now someone's getting a ticket automatically. Like, what level of enforcement are we talking about? Can you give me an example of like when someone might get cited for this versus when they might get a warning versus when they might just get a talking to?
You know, I think internally our major focus right off the bat will be trails, and when people are on the move is what we like to say. So the pedestrian mall, trails, sidewalks, streets. That's where we really have the highest level of concern, and I think that's where we'd start with our focus. You know, our rangers have an approach that's very much focused on education as the beginning of the contact. They're not quick to jump to ticketing, but we do really want to curb any potential conflicts that we would see out on the trails, sidewalks, et cetera, just because we know, as you all know, those pieces of our infrastructure are really highly used, particularly in the summer, particularly with the advent of e-bikes.
Got it. I guess just like with that, one of the things I wrote down was I'm sensitive to Heron Park and my dog. Call this English Bulldog discrimination. You know, trying to get a dog into the water with a leash still on sort of thing just like seems silly to me. And you know, I can't plead ignorance when I have my English Bulldog off leash in Heron Park sitting here. So I'm just wondering if my English Bulldog's in the water off leash, like what can I expect from that if there's no problem being caused?
We'd certainly love to see compliance.
Yes.
In the summer, obviously this is when we're trying to mitigate this. Why not walk into the water yourself with sandals on with your dog?
It's possible. Sometimes I feel like it, sometimes I don't.
I want to highlight that there are solutions around this, and there's a lot of places where dog access is allowed off leash into the water. Heron Park is one where we're trying to strike a compromise within the community on this, and I think because of the small space that Heron Park is, the density of its usage and its interface with water and kids, this is where we landed. We're certainly open to other suggestions, should council give us those.
No, it's just funny. Laws like this, like, you know, this is stupid to say, but there's things like murder and then there's things like leash laws, and like one of them's really heinous and the other is like, you should follow the law because it's the law sort of thing. So I'm just trying to get a sense of, I don't know, feeling comfortable approving this when I feel uncomfortable with myself thinking that I'm going to follow it with my English Bulldog in Heron Park, to be honest with you. So I feel uncomfortable because I just don't want to be a hypocrite, to be honest. Yeah. And not all dogs are the same. That's like the joke I have for you here is like my English Bulldog's different than like a Rottweiler that's different than a Golden Retriever. So like a lot of times I joke my dog's not a dog sort of thing. So this is, I don't know, this one just is.
We understand.
Tough.
And it's a very difficult one to find a solution that fits all dogs, all users, all public spaces. So that's what we're looking for as a compromise here.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Sad about this one, I guess.
John?
Yeah, I want to thank both you guys and your team for working on this. I think this is high time for an update. And I'd like to share my own anecdote about my 70-pound pit bull mix was attacked by a much larger dog in Heron Park while my dog was on a leash, right after the owner said, "It's okay, he's friendly." So it was a very expensive dog attack, and it happened in Heron Park. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, with that comment, I just want to reiterate that I am really appreciative of this work. I've had the same thing happen to me where someone says it's a friendly dog. They're not always friendly. Some of them are very annoying. Some of them are the most wonderful dogs you've seen, but it does happen, and that's why I will support this level of enforcement, because I believe it will be enacted upon when it is a problem.
I've already heard it about this. I walked into a local watering hole the other night, and the bartender said to me, "Oh, we were just talking about you." I assumed it was bad, but
That's when you turn around.
but I sit down, and he says, "Yeah, somebody was just in here complaining about how stupid you are with this leash law that you're doing." So I don't have a real feel on this. I know you guys are trying to do the best you can for everybody involved here. So I'm going to support this. I think that is the kind of thing that we need to have our ear open to our community. But to those that are out there, there are many benefits to keeping your dog on a leash, not just to others, but to yourself as well. So it is actually a good idea in most places. There are a lot of places that you can get your dog off leash as well. So those opportunities do exist. Ward, comments or questions?
Well, I can't resist this. I don't really have a dog in this fight, but I question whether this ordinance these changes will decrease the incidences of dog and people with the eye on safety is the most important thing. Sam asked most of the questions that I really was interested in on enforcement, and does these ordinance changes give the rangers more tools and the ability to enforce where they did not before? Do you have sufficient rangers for the bandwidth to enforce the new ordinance changes?
I think that last question, Sarah.
I would say I'm taking a look at the combination of a lot of enforcement needs on the rangers, particularly around biking. And you'll start seeing a pretty big campaign, which will turn from education to enforcement pretty quickly here as we have a back to school time in the community. So we are looking at it much more comprehensively than just this code change on that staffing level.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 10, series of 24.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please, for ordinance number 10?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. Next item up for us is ordinance number 11. This is updates to the tree code to address wildfire mitigation.
Great, thank you. Another ordinance update for us, trying to address emerging trends in the community. This one's an interesting one because it really has an eye for reducing wildfire risk while also envisioning what our future landscape might look like. I think we all understand that removing trees inherently may benefit certain properties and reduce their wildfire risk. But because this code applies to the entire city of Aspen, we also need to be pretty mindful and cognizant about how this might affect other properties that might have low risk or have trees of significant value to the community. So with that, I'll hand back over to John and let him run through the quick summary here.
All right, before I get going, just a reminder, we did work very closely with Aspen Fire Protection District on this work and the development of the code. Just as background. So once again, starting off with the goal, we wanted to develop a policy that balances the wildfire risks that the community of Aspen faces and the value of trees to our community. Passing the ordinance will create an allowance for the removal of trees for fire mitigation purposes, and the policy will shape the future of what the community forest will look like. Now, if you read through every word of the ordinance, you will notice that there are lots of small changes within it that are, for lack of a better term, help clean it up. But I wanted to get right to the meat of it, which happens in 3A, where we recognize that wildfire is a risk. Before, that was not included within an exception for a removal. And then going on to section 5, where wildfire risk is identified as a basis for removal permit for either removal or relocation of any trees, the Parks and Recreation Director or his designee shall either grant or deny the requested permit based upon criteria identified in the wildfire mitigation policy. So the wildfire mitigation policy was a part of this submission, and as an approval of this ordinance, you are also approving the wildfire mitigation policy. Is that correct, Matt? Did I phrase that correctly?
You did, and there's some reasons for that I'll touch on very briefly here. Number one, we'd like to make the changes to the municipal code as long-lasting as possible. And number two, this is new to us. We're at the forefront in communities in Colorado that are changing and adapting to how to remove trees with as robust of a code as we have. So we expect we're going to have some lessons learned as we roll this out. And we hope that we are able to adopt periodic changes within our policy and not necessarily need to come back frequently for first and second reading of ordinance changes. I don't know when we'll be back on the policy changes, but I suspect sometime in the next couple of years we're going to have some lessons learned as we roll this out within the community.
Great. So the policy is a longer document with a lot of detail in it, but I think there's basically three tenets. First of all, we're relying on FireWise standards, which identify zones around the home for removals. Second, wildfire risk mapping, so identifying your property and where it lies within the wildfire risk map. This is an ongoing process, finding an accurate and up-to-date system. We're working closely with the Fire Protection District on that. And then finally, working towards fire-resistant planting. And as you know, part of the mitigation offsets can be achieved by using some of the fire-resistant plants that we referenced in that document. Currently, that list is held by Colorado State University, and it's pretty extensive. I'm showing 3 of the pages there, but I think it's a 5-page document. A couple of questions that we had from the first reading. Are there alternatives or options to relieve a requirement to replant on parcels and lots that are relatively small? So first of all, the changes to the code and supporting wildfire mitigation policy do not have requirements for replanting and are instead characterized as tree replanting is encouraged. There are no mitigation fees assessed for removals within 5 feet of a structure. So on a lot of the smaller lots with the smaller setbacks, we're talking about removing trees that would have no mitigation fee associated with it. In addition, the small lots, replanting of trees are ultimately at the discretion of the city forester, just as a note to that. Will fees in lieu be allowed, or will fees be waived? Once again, fees will be fully waived for any removals within 5 feet of structure. Beyond 5 feet of structure, the removal may be subject to mitigation fees. Waivers may be considered. This is at the discretion of the city forester. Mitigation fees are reduced or fully offset when replanting occurs. More detail on that is in the wildfire mitigation policy. I'm happy to dive into that if we need further discussion. Can replanting with fire-resistant trees in the relative same spots be considered? Yes, given that they are not within 5 feet of the structure. Those were the 3 questions that we had prepared for, but happy to entertain more.
Sam?
Yeah, I guess that last question, can replanting, proper English, it should be like, may replant it there. Can we force replantation of trees on the property if it is deemed acceptable rather than planting it elsewhere? I just want to is that in the code that they have to do it, or just that they could do it?
Could.
Could.
The way that we're envisioning this is in the 5 feet, and it really, that's why we bring up the defensible space zones. It really depends on the 2 variables in this equation, which are how far is it from your structure and what zone are you in. So because we have that matrix with the 3 different colors, if you're in a low-risk zone and you want to remove significant trees far from your structure, we may not permit those. And so to answer your question kind of in a roundabout way, it might not become an issue. When someone does need to remove something because it's a wildfire risk, there's going to be a conversation with our forester, and as we're moving through the permitting process on what their intentions are for replanting. We're going to strive to replant and adapt our urban forest to be as resilient as possible in all of these decisions, but we also need to recognize that fuel reduction is an important component of this, and so requiring a replanting might not actually be benefiting the homeowner or the parcel or the wildfire risk. There are so many variables and nuances to this, and each property is going to be different. And so we really tried to adapt this in a way that's fairly structured, but recognizes there's a decent amount of conversation and discretion that our forester is also going to need to continue to play in this.
This might be a silly question, but forcing people to do anything, but if they're going to take down a tree, especially outside that 5 feet zone or that's not wildfire risk, can we require that they plant the tree elsewhere? I hate to see us reduce trees, but I hate to see, especially within our urban forest, it really is one of the things that makes Aspen, Aspen.
Understood. I think we're striving, again, to make this with a more resilient urban forest as the outcome. The way it's written now, we're not requiring trees to be replanted. I think as this plays out over the next couple of years, could we find ourselves in a scenario where replanting under certain circumstances is required? Possibly. At this juncture, I think there's just too many unknowns and variables to set that firm of a requirement.
Well, then I would just make a gentle request that you keep your thumb on this issue and come back to us if it does need requirement, because a lot of times when we set policy and expect people to do the right thing, that's not what they end up doing. So let's protect the trees, protect our forests. So thank you.
And I do want to emphasize that this code does not allow someone to go into their backyard tomorrow and cut down a tree.
Yep.
There is still a robust permitting process. We're still Tree City USA.
Yep.
We still are prioritizing trees in this community for sure. And that it will be at the discretion of the forester to assess all of the components of the home assessment that you guys approved in the IGA with the Aspen Fire Protection District. Marry that with the requested tree removals, and then ultimately we will permit what we think is appropriate for removal. So we will definitely be keeping our finger on the urban forest and making sure that it stays an important resource for us.
No, thank you. I support this for that reason, because I trust your guys' discretion. I just wanted to emphasize how much I care for the trees. So.
Bill?
Thanks again for all the great work on this. I think it's important. I'm curious about how this is going to work in relationship to proposed development versus existing development. I know it's a big question that may not be easily answered, but.
And I'll be honest, I don't think we have that answer just yet. These proposed changes are for standalone tree permits. When you layer in development and tree removal associated with a proposed development change, it gets complicated, especially as it pertains to wildfire risk, fuel reduction or mitigation fees and such. So at this juncture, we're taking this first step with standalone tree permits, and we're keeping a very close eye on how that interfaces with development-related tree permits.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Ready for a motion? Oh, it's, yeah.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for ordinance number 11. Are there members of the public that wish to comment this evening? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of the hearing.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to pass ordinance number 11, series of 2024.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote for ordinance number 11?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that'll bring us on our agenda to action items. Our first one is resolution number 95. This is approving a funding request from WMRHC for the Good Deeds Program.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here to present Resolution 95, Series 2024, which is a request for funding for the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition and that Good Deeds Program. Essentially, it's a pilot program to convert free market housing into deed-restricted housing in the Roaring Fork Valley. And we don't have a presentation this evening because you recently had a work session on this, but we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions? All right. I would just like to request a little update. Where are you in funding, and what do you see the program as kicking off? When would you do your distribution for any of these funds?
So we have raised $1.55 million, so $1,550,000 from other participating local governments to date. And we launched the program last week. I issued a press release on Friday. So it should be out there. Everyone should be advertising it. We have one applicant putting an offer on a house tonight.
Nice.
Where's the house? Sorry.
It's in Glenwood Springs.
Can you share the value of the house?
I don't know.
Bill.
If we need more information, I can tell you about the process and when I find that information out, if you want more information on that.
I noticed in your memo that you said that businesses are allowed to participate in Eagle County's program, but no businesses have participated yet. Do you know why? Can you theorize on why? I think that could be a tool that could be leveraged to enhance this program. So I'm wondering why theirs has not.
When I
taken
spoke with,
off.
sorry. When I spoke with Eagle County, they did not know why businesses have not used that option either. They didn't have any back and forth with any businesses. They haven't had any even try it. I did speak with Breckenridge and got their information after I wrote the memo. Breckenridge has had a couple of businesses use their option. And I agree with you. I think that it would be something that businesses would be really interested in here in our region. But we're just limiting this first rollout to helping local workforce. So that might be an option for our program later. But for this, we felt it was important to help the local workforce community and allow them that opportunity to pivot and grow professionally and not have their workforce tied or their housing tied to their work, to their employer, to their job.
Got it. Well, I'd encourage you to talk to all the Valley Chambers of Commerce and see if there's maybe a different version of the program that could help you accomplish your goals and help businesses thrive. So.
We have a funding strategies advisory committee, and all of the members, all of the directors of the chambers are helping us on that committee. And so we're certainly exploring opportunities for businesses and employers to get involved in this coalition.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Ward.
Yeah, hi, well, couple of questions. What are the provisions for right to retire in a property?
They're similar to APSHA's retirement requirements, which I believe are that you will need to show proof of working in this region for 10 years immediately prior to retirement and be of a retirement age. We're working out the details of what that retirement age is because I believe APSHA has just worked through their own language, and so I'm working with some representatives from APSHA on what that exact language would be, but you will be able to retire in this program.
And that's 10 years after you've taken possession, or 10 years work history in total?
10 years work history in total immediately prior to retirement, 4 years in the program before retiring.
Okay.
And again, I believe that aligns with APSHA.
Okay, thank you. You have enforcement mechanisms, appeals in place for, it says employment will continue to be verified annually. So what happens and what is the mechanism and protocols for people that are not in compliance?
We have program requirements and have been very upfront with the requirement for annual recertification and compliance, continued compliance with the program. I believe that enforcement would fall upon me, and I would be seeking legal assistance to do so. But we haven't been in that situation yet.
Being on the APSHA board, I think I can predict that you will be at some point. I think this is a good example of providing housing, deed restricted housing without construction. So I support this. It's 0.29% of our annual budget, I think. It's not a lot of money, and if it's successful, it could it could be a real benefit to the community. My major concern is people that purchase this with money supplied by the city of Aspen 150 fund and basically not working for the city or selling to somebody that doesn't work, not for the city, but within Pickens County. So it's, I guess we're just on faith that it's a regional issue, a regional concern, and that our money is going to be directed to the region and not specifically to Pickens County.
Yep.
Couple more questions.
Sure, Bill.
Is it accurate that the only requirement is that someone be a working member of the Roaring Fork and Middle Colorado River Valleys?
There are a little more requirements than that. So they have to prove local employment from a local employer. We have certain number of hours, a percentage of your salary that follows that. The house has to be used as your primary residence. You have to live there 9 out of 12, any 12 consecutive months. It cannot be short-term rented, and you can't own any other residential property anywhere.
Anywhere in the world?
Anywhere.
And how does the math work? Is appreciation capped, or is it just forever restricted to those same criteria?
It's a price-capped appreciation of 3% annually.
Great. And how have you, what have you learned from APSHA over APSHA's history? You know, one of my biggest concerns about APSHA, and something that Aspen's working on actively and APSHA's working on actively, is the disincentive to take care of your property, right? You're not recapturing that investment adequately compared to what it costs to take care of the property appropriately. So how are you, what have you implemented so far to solve for that?
We definitely heard that concern from APSHA, and those that have, dealt with APSHA's programs or been on APSHA's board. What we have done is incorporated an opportunity to recover some of your capital improvements. And so we have a capital improvements, program and a depreciation schedule of what that is. We also believe that, I think that our program is a little bit differently because we won't buy and sell your property for you. So the sale of the property is still up to the owner. They have to sell it. We facilitate the sale, we qualify the next buyer, but it is still their home to resell. And so I believe putting that responsibility on them could put them in a situation that if you don't have a sellable home, then it's still just your home.
Right, I think over the long term, as the delta between market rate and this 3% annual appreciation widens, it'll be easier for people to sell their home regardless of condition, which is what we're experiencing in APSHA.
Right.
So, again, I encourage you to learn as much as you can from that lesson of APSHA's and try to solve for it from the beginning if you can.
I would just say that in the development of these regulations that Diane Foster and other members of the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition directors who have long experience in this space, Betsy Crum and other folks who have spent a lot of time in the space were really instrumental in the development of the regulation. So I think there were robust conversations in development, looking at all those issues.
And we recognize that, like any program, over time, we're going to make modifications to our requirements as we learn and grow and have the administrative capability to support the program. So there's a lot to go forward with. We just would like the opportunity to go forward.
Right. So you're calling it a pilot program. When is your check-in on success? How are you going to measure success?
We intend to come back to all of our funding partners at the end of this year with a report of how we've done. And at the end of every year, I think that it's my understanding nobody has reallocated the funding that they've given us or are rebudgeting for it. And so it may just be a $1.5 or $2 million pilot program until we can acquire more funding.
And last question from me for now. Any non-governmental sources of funding so far?
Not yet, but we, in our funding strategies advisory committee, are ready to ask for that contribution. Our strategists are letting us know that their potential philanthropic partners are waiting to see if we have 100% buy-in from our local governments.
Has Eagle County had success with non-governmental funding sources?
Eagle County has a tax. They're a housing authority and they have a tax, so they don't seek funding. And they also get grants from the state if that's what you're interested in those types of funding opportunities.
So no philanthropic donations, or they haven't tried for it? Or
as far as I know, they haven't tried for it or received any. I can double check that answer.
And any state level funding available at this point to you?
For this program, no. We tried very hard to structure this program in a way that the state could support it, and they were in conversations with us for over a year to try to figure out how to support this. The biggest issue with state and federal funding for us is in that this program does not have an income cap, because we are recognizing that there's a missing middle that needs to be supported. And so right now the state cannot figure out how to get over that income cap issue. However, we have 2 different state agencies visiting with us and with all of you. I hope you all are aware that they're visiting with us on Friday to talk about that issue.
Good work, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just ask Jen to clarify, my understanding is that there was federal funding that was utilized, though, to develop to what is now known as West Mountain.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, not
it
federal,
actually,
state funding.
yeah, it was state funding. So there was this effort coming out of the pandemic by the state to have technical assistance to have resiliency for communities. So there were a number of communities across the state, I think about a dozen. And in our community, we worked on affordable housing as the issue that we thought was the most important to resiliency. So as part of that roadmap effort, one of the recommendations or one of the outcomes of that process was to further develop an effort that had already been going on to have a regional housing authority, or what we ended up with was this regional nonprofit. So that effort had been happening since the mid, 2016, 2017, and really that resiliency project that the state had with that technical assistance, I think, helped us get actually started for the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition. One thing I didn't mention in my preamble is that there's the request is for $450,000 that's budgeted in this year's budget. There is a blank in the resolution, so that's one of the questions and the reason that it's on action, as an action item this evening.
Yeah, so thank you for that. The coalition has certainly received state support, and just this one program that we're talking about has not. However, Pickens County's funding of this program is from federal funds that were part of the ARPA package.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Ward.
Yeah, a point of clarification, is the appreciation, I thought I read the appreciation was only based upon the homeowner's portion of the purchase price. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and is there any prospect of Garfield County being a participant in this program?
We intend to re-engage with Garfield County later this year.
Great, thank you, April. I feel this program is in great hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ward. So for council, what we've got, I think, in the form of a resolution, it does have a blank at the end. I'm gonna just say it. I'm very skeptical of this program. I'm very skeptical of the direct impact that it will have for our community, the taxpayers that pay these taxes. I don't know that the return is there for them. If this council wants to support this program, my suggestion would be to do it this year for $250,000. See how it goes through this first year. As we're hearing, it will take re-upping next year if this is gonna get legs. Right now, I just can't find myself supporting almost $500,000 when our housing program has needs. There are opportunities for us here for whether it's deed buy downs, deed sunsets that we can be purchasing, whether it's our capital improvement program and stuff. $500,000 goes a long way for us here in a time that actually our housing program does need money. So if anybody is interested in making a motion that is set at a $250,000 level, I will be in on supporting that. If the motion comes through at $450,000, I don't think I'm going to be able to support that this evening. My only questions here kind of really are about the fact that the cap here is a $1.5 million or less. There's only 21 of those homes in Pickens County. If you do the math for 30%, we are looking at possibly, if people take advantage of the program, at $1.8 million. If we did $250,000, you'd be at $1.8 million. That's about $300,000 to $400,000 per home. So you're getting, about 6 people might be able to take advantage of this program. So I would say to this council, if we want to support this and give it a shot and see if people are going to take advantage of it. Let's see if those 6 slots get taken advantage of. So anyway, I'll support it at $250,000, but I don't think I'll be able to support any higher than that tonight.
I have one last quick
Go ahead,
technical
Bill.
question, probably for Jim. Does this funding have to come from our operating budget, or can it come from 150, or is somehow the 150 funds restricted to use within city limits of Aspen or otherwise?
What the plan was that they would come from the 150 funds. I don't think they were.
I have like a vague memory of conversation on this.
That was our
prior, but-
intention, that right now, this is currently budgeted in the 150 fund. There's been a lot of discussion, though, about that nexus test amongst the counselors about being able to show that. So I think in a pilot scenario, that works. I think on a long-term basis, we would, if you were to be a continued funder as a municipality here, we would take a look at it, whether that's really something that should continue out of the 150 fund. As a regional pilot, I'm not concerned about it being an issue.
No, me neither.
Thanks. I'm happy to start with a motion if you want, or if someone else can.
If there's no other questions, we can take a motion.
Well, I'm willing to give it a shot, so I will, and I'm looking forward to data on it, so I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 95, Series of 24.
With an amount.
I'm sorry, for the requested 450,000.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Sorry.
Go right ahead.
Oh, no, I just, the comment I have for this, whether it be 250 or 450 is, the truth is I kind of suspect, being unique and being the city of Aspen, that if this program is successful, we probably could do it on our own and not need the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition and be more tailored to city of Aspen specific housing needs. So as much as I'm willing to support this tonight, I am skeptical that, I don't know, that we would do it in the future because it might just be a city of Aspen housing program instead. But to be determined. Just want to be honest about that, so thank you.
This is a stretch for me, but we look at our problems as regional problems, and because the Western Mountain is a regional organization, I'm willing to take a risk on this, and although it is a stretch for me, and 450K is would be a lot for me, but it's not a lot for the city, and it could benefit the whole community, the community being the whole valley and up the I-70 corridor. So I will be supporting this.
Bill?
Just to provide a counterpoint to Sam, I understand Sam's point and have flipped in my own head a lot on this, but I think it's important to acknowledge that not every member of Aspen's workforce wants to or can live in Aspen for a variety of reasons. And that doesn't mean that they're not an important member of Aspen's workforce, whether they're 100% of their working time is dedicated to serving people in Aspen or serving Aspen's economy, or not. You know, we all drive down Valley and utilize those services there. That I sort of consider that part of our economy and our community and our life. So I think that this does fit in to the total equation somehow. I don't know how yet, and I don't think anyone does, and I don't know, hopefully there will be some data to sort of quantify the results and qualify the results as time goes on. But I think it's an important part of the equation, and it may actually prove to be a more cost-effective part of the equation than what we do in our housing program today. So I'm interested to see how it works. You know, not everything has to happen in Aspen.
No, I agree with you, and all I'm saying is you could do the same stipulations as this program with the added stipulation that they have to work in Aspen or Pickens County at urban growth boundary. That's it. But this could work in the way you describe, and that's why I'm very open to exploring it and giving the 450, especially because we budgeted the 450, and that's more or less why I'm up to that number, so.
And staff will evaluate that actual proposal when we see the data from this, because we have debated, you know, you as a council made a request for that limitation to West Mountain. The West Mountain Board has declined your request, and so we understand that's an important consideration for you. And so if that is not something that West Mountain is willing to facilitate, we will let you know what it takes for the city of Aspen and/or APSHA to facilitate it.
And if I might just add, did council receive an email today from a participant in the program?
Council did receive an email very late today that I doubt they had an opportunity to review, given the late time it was submitted.
Okay.
And it was not submitted to public comment, so we've had to get some of that addressed.
Oh, I'm sorry. If it's valuable and appropriate, I can read the letter. Sorry.
John?
Yeah, this being a pilot program, the fact that housing is largely our biggest regional crisis up and down the valley and beyond, the fact that resilience is one of this council's goals, I will support this.
Great. My last discussion is, like I said before, I think that this money could go a long way in our own program. We could be buying down some buying some sunsetted deed restrictions that'll be coming up. We could be doing capital improvements. We could be doing a lot. I'm excited about this for regional housing, absolutely. I just don't have the confidence in it that it's the best use of our taxpayer dollars up here. So I'm not going to support it this evening. Can we please have a roll call vote for the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition's Good Deeds Program funding for $450,000?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
No. Thank you.
Thanks, April. Thanks, Jen.
Next item for us up tonight is the EOTC presentation.
Hi.
Hey, Linda.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for your time, Mayor and council members. I've got to share my screen here. How do I do that? Sorry. I see you so seldom, I get out of practice.
Please, could you please step up there and assist her? Thank you.
It keeps the little share thing keeps disappearing.
You're almost there.
There we go.
There you go.
And
So
then
just share your.
share that. Share.
Slideshow.
All right, so we're here today because we have not had a chance to meet all year, and our EOTC staff there are two opportunities for two timely projects that we are asking for your consideration to add to our 2024 work plan and budget. The EOTC IGA that created the EOTC and then subsequent versions of it as recently as 2021 allow for EOTC business to be conducted separately with each of the three jurisdictions if we can't all meet at once. So after I meet with y'all tonight, then I'm going to Snowmass next week, and 2 weeks from now, going to the county with these two projects. So the two projects that we would like to add to the budget are the Maroon Bells Comprehensive Recreation Management Plan Implementation Plan, which is a partnership of several partners I'll go into in a second. That cost would just be $38,600 for the EOTC's portion of that. The second one is a transportation planning process that we feel is now critical for the Aspen Airport Business Center. That's being triggered by the, as the design of the lumberyard comes online, multimodal access from that development into the ABC.
That's the scope of that, is moving people from the lumberyard to the ABC?
There are specific transportation planning that's going to go on with that project, because it is, the edge of it is the City of Aspen city limits, and then the access into the ABC to the transit stations there and access to the airport from that side is then in the county. So it is a transportation plan of regional interest, our staff felt, and it's a timely project because that design is starting to happen. The staff for the lumberyard approached Andrew Knapp, our county engineer, about how we were going to make those connections. And as we started to look at those, we felt that the whole area sort of needed a transportation relook, since it had never really had a transportation master plan.
So this goes back to, right, we made a request to Pickens County about 6 years ago for a transportation, integrated transit plan for this area. Those discussions weren't fruitful in moving that forward. And so now we're really at a point where unfortunately it's a bit piecemeal between the different transit components at this time. We have, again, the county's not ready to enter into discussions on mass transit service at the airport, as we are a few years away from planning route details for the lumberyard. But we will be, by entitlement, we are required to provide a minimum of 30-minute bus service to this area. And there's a lot of questions about how do we assure connectivity to those spaces.
Yeah, I was just clarifying, what you'd said was that it was about the lumberyard and moving people to the ABC. But it's not, it's the airport, it's the ABC, it's the lumberyard, up and down the corridor.
So everything north of 82, from the lumberyard property over into the ABC, is what we're looking at with this situation. The manager is correct that the whole, the county did apply for a RAISE grant to look at the whole airport multimodal plan comprehensively. We didn't get that, but we heard recently that we are being reconsidered for the second round of that to be released by the Biden administration soon. But this was really looking at the lumberyard, the bike and ped connections, first of all, from the lumberyard over to the ABC where the transit stops are. We first just looked at that, and the more we sort of considered the current design of the ABC, which started out as a light industrial park in the late 70s. It has evolved into what you could call a very small suburban neighborhood.
I totally get it.
So it's time to look at.
All I was asking was the funds
sorry.
that are attributed here and that are being, I guess, requested to be budgeted for this process. And you're kind of clarifying it. It has nothing to do with 82 or south of 82 over to the airport.
Right.
It is north of 82. It is about interfacing the lumberyard with the ABC, sidewalks and bikes.
Sidewalks and bikes and vehicular as well.
And vehicular as well. Okay.
And then that just triggered the opportunity to look at the whole district, which never really had a transportation master plan. All the multimodal safety and connectivity issues through the whole thing, which our staff, the EOTC staff felt was a regional project, and that's why we feel it falls into the EOTC's purview. And I'll show you some things after I get this part done.
Okay.
The Maroon Bells Comprehensive Implementation Plan is The Maroon Bells plan was done, completed in 2022. The county led that process, but the partners were all, I have to go back. Sorry. It was a partnership between the National Forest, the Chamber, the City of Aspen, the county, RAFTA, and SKICO, as SKICO manages the Highlands parking garage where the shuttles take off from. They engaged a consultant from the Volpe Center, which is a USDOT Transportation Systems Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's roughly associated with MIT. Those consultants came down here and created a whole comprehensive plan for what happens in the primitive areas of the Bells, in the wilderness area, in the backcountry activities, but also the transportation from town to the Bells. And then they came up with the plan and started to look at all the different pieces of it. And the next step is going to be implementing some of those steps in late '24 and 2025, and monitoring some of the things that came out of the plan for the different transportation issues on the road. So the transportation scope of work for the plan is really just concerned with how you get people up to there. It's the capacity and efficiency of the RAFTA shuttle and reservation system that was put into place a few years ago. Managing the parking reservation and system, both at Highlands and then at the parking lots leading up to the Bells. Extensive user conflicts on the road between private vehicles and buses, cyclists, the big chunks of e-bike groups that rent bikes in Aspen and then go up and ride up there, and some of those conflicts that have emerged. And then looking at a potential direct transit service from Aspen up to the Bells, maybe eventually still using the Highlands stop, but also just having it more direct so that you don't have trips to Highland, car trips to Highlands, and then get on the bus. So the whole team that was working on this, with City of Aspen working separately with Pitkin County, felt, and our staff felt, that because it is also another regional transportation issue that goes outside of city boundaries into the county, we felt that it was a good fit for EOTC funding. So we're asking for consideration of that. The whole budget for the implementation plan is $92,000. And the majority of the transportation issues that will be dealt with on the road, the share of the planning and implementation and monitoring of that is estimated at $38,600, which the EOTC would be asked to fund, and also do a small part of the management, just of the contract. There's a management need because the forest doesn't have the staff and the funding to manage it on their own. So a collaborative effort between all the partners is needed at this point. Do I have questions about that before I go on to the ABC part? Nope. Okay. So on to the ABC. As I said, this neighborhood, district, whatever, is now a whole mix of uses out there that we feel is precipitating a transportation master plan. We've got retail, light industrial, a variety of eateries. There are fitness businesses out there. There's dentist offices. There's wonderful residential now, a variety of different kinds of residences spread throughout the whole thing. And like I said, it never really had a transportation plan because of the gradual way it developed over the last 4 to 5 decades. So we feel like we're at the point where it has a regional interest, it crosses jurisdictional boundaries, and it makes sense to do that planning now. Is my cursor going to show up on the screen?
Yes.
Is it?
It's in the middle.
All right. Yeah, a pointer would be better. So just to point out what we're looking at, so this is the lumberyard over here. That new signal is going in there. This there is the right in, right out sort of, I've tipped it, it's really got a north-south orientation, but I've tipped it east-west, just get it all into the screen. That right in, right out is going to be closed. So the vehicles that were accessing the ABC there will now be shifted over to the signal at the lumberyard, or they will come down and have to enter here at Baltic and at the Baltic Avenue. It's also called, I believe, AABC 500 Road. The older term for it is Baltic. So that is going to shift a lot of auto traffic into the entrance. The current pathway from the edge of the lumberyard into the ABC is along here. There is planned a actual frontage road that will go north of the path and enter to the area roughly where the right, bless you, where the right in, right out is. Back here, there are sections of the ABC that have no sidewalk. Even though there is residential, there's recreation access to the back, there's sidewalk gaps in this area, there's vehicle connectivity issues. If you are driving back to Lewis Swiss and then you want to come back out, you try to access the property from the back, but there's a gate here that closes off that vehicle access. That's kind of connectivity problem as a whole district. Then when we come over to the CMC, we have big sidewalk gaps. There's no ADA access from these sidewalks down to CMC. There are narrow roads with no bike lanes, sight distance issues. So we've got some serious transportation safety and access problems all through the ABC that we think this is a good opportunity to solve. Also, there is a vast undersupply of parking to a lot of the businesses, don't have enough parking. The county, when it dedicated the roads out there, there is 60 feet of right-of-way on most of these roads with utilities and trees and landscaping. There's a lot of room to work with in terms of adding sidewalks and bike lanes, maybe even some additional parking. Okay, come on.
Does the ABC management have any part in this? Is this a partnership? Is this all EOTC?
No. It will, should we decide to go forward with it, that is our first call. And we expect a lot of the budget of this project or the work is going to be extensive outreach to everybody out there, the residences, the businesses, find out what they need. The county does hear a lot from folks out there that there's not enough parking. We recently put bike share out there that's very popular and is being highly utilized. When we did that, we heard from some residences that some business owners were concerned if there was enough bike facilities. They were concerned about bike safety and bike circulation on some of the roads. So the outreach part of this is going to be a big part of it. This is just an initial, we would like to do this. We want to get started on it now, which is why we're coming to you in late 2024 instead of waiting till next year. We just think it's time, given that the design on the lumberyard is starting to happen.
Okay. Any questions around this, guys? Okay.
Something's gone on with my computer. I can't seem to advance this. That's okay. I had some photos for you that just showed a lot of the transportation issues, particularly, what's this one here?
It's okay, I think we're
Only
pretty
they-
familiar.
I think you're pretty familiar. This is generally how it goes. There's a need to retrofit a neighborhood, and do you want the EOTC to participate in that last mile connectivity through this funding request that's being recommended by staff? I don't know that there's a whole lot more. If you want, we can always pull you back all the feedback we received, and we'll pass on again to the county that feedback we received from AABC residents in the lumberyard process. A lot of the things being mentioned are things that you have committed that the lumberyard is not going to increase parking issues and things like that, and so you've over-parked your development.
The action here, there's no resolution, so this is just feedback.
So you
Linda?
have two options. You could do nothing and take the input. You could make a motion in support of these two projects to give an indication of where you stand to the other two governing bodies. The actual vote is also tied to a formal meeting for appropriations. Because that has to be done in a different way than what you can do here tonight. So you have really kind of the option of give a motion to support one or both projects tonight, or to withhold your decision-making on it if you are not prepared to do that tonight.
You ready for a motion?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to approve the EOTC funding requests for Maroon Bells and the AABC.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
I totally get the issues at AABC. Seems like one of those things that the city of Aspen shouldn't have to play a role in, but maybe that's what the EOTC is there for. It's not happening by anyone else, so if you can help solve for some of those issues there, great.
We would like to. Those of us who take the RAFTA, take the bus to the ABC, I work at the Public Works Fleet Complex. Upstream from us is RAFTA, then CMC. And there are people walking all over the ABC in pretty hazardous conditions. I'm going to show you this intersection at Baltic. This intersection is terrifying. There's no sidewalks at the end of it on the Sage Way part that comes up at the gas station. There's trees there, so there's no sidewalk. There's no crosswalk. There's no protected pedestrian space of any kind in that intersection. And we don't know the magnitude of it, but we predict that the right-in, right-out closure is going to drive more car traffic into Baltic. There already isn't much storage space for vehicles between 82 and Sage Way.
Thank you, Linda. They have a motion on the floor. It's really council discussion now.
Oh, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Thanks.
Sorry.
And I just drifted off thinking about some other stuff. Yeah.
It's late.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote for support of the EOTC work plan and budget supplemental request?
Counselor Doyle? Yes. Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I've continued to speak with my peers at the other two jurisdictions around governance. These are dollar amount requests that normally would not come to you under our procurement process. And some thoughts I will share with you at a future date about how perhaps that can be administratively handled with some guiding direction from the council. We're also looking at reducing the number of annual meetings of the three jurisdictions from 4 to 1. Thank you.
And then just clarification for everybody, the funds that were just approved for the AABC, those are investigative funds. That does not include the work that will come recommended out of it, correct?
No, it's just a planning process initially.
So, I mean, we're talking about
Millions.
millions. Yeah,
Potentially.
yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item, guys, is resolution number 96. It is actually, it's 20 till 8, but it's 20 till 10 where 1/5 of us are. So we're going to try to just go ahead and get through this without any break. If anybody needs a quick restroom break, go ahead and just take it. This is resolution number 96. This is the waiver of privilege.
Mr. Mayor, this is to do as we did with my confidential memo regarding the necessity of a vote on the entrance to Aspen. This came up from a citizen asking council to, quote, take up questions regarding participation of Councilor Guth in the entrance to Aspen discussions. Following receipt of that email from the citizen, I did a review of the status and provided an opinion to Mr. Guth that he could participate. I also provided to council a confidential memo outlining my evaluation of that issue. At the first work session last week on the Castle Creek Bridge, Mr. Guth brought the matter up, and council directed me to bring a resolution back to council waiving the privilege and releasing the confidential memo. And I have done that. This is the same, essentially the same resolution as with the previous confidential memo that waives it specifically, waives the privilege that is within the discretion of council to do, but specifically on that memo itself. There is no other extension of a waiver that can be, that is being granted or can be implied from this waiver. It is, again, in the discretion of council if you wish to pass this resolution waiving the confidential privileged communication that I had provided to you previously.
Thank you.
Make a motion? Oh, no.
Before you do that, and please do, is it appropriate for me to vote on this, participate in this vote?
Yes.
Okay. I figured it was, otherwise you would have told me to leave the room.
It's a good question, but yeah.
Send them another memo.
We'll waive it.
I'll make a motion to pass resolution number 96, series of 2024.
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote on resolution number 96, a waiver of privilege?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes.
And for the record, as soon as the resolution is signed by the mayor, will post the memo on the city's website.
Thank you.
I'm going to take you up on the bathroom break.
Yep,
quickly.
go right ahead.
I guess I'll do the same then.
We're going to take a 3-minute break before we get to our next item. Our next and final item of the evening. And welcome back. We just took a short break, but this is heading towards the end of our regular meeting for August 13th, 2024. Our last item on our agenda is under action items. This is an opportunity for council discussion and possible direction on Castle Creek Bridge and entrance to Aspen items. Council, let me say a few things and kind of get us all on the same page if I can, and then we need to discuss about how we need to move forward. Where we are, what I have is that a majority of council does not believe that the record of decision and preferred alternative as presented, 2 bus lanes, 2 traffic lanes, transit corridor, and shoulders, is the best solution to replacing the Castle Creek Bridge and improving transit at this time. To those ends, though, there are a few priorities. One is council members do see the need to replace the Castle Creek Bridge as soon as possible. In that discussion, there is conversation around 3 lanes or 2 lanes and S-curve improvements. I think that some of this, at least the conversation last night, was around the 3-lane bridge deck and the disturbance, both on the residents down on Harbor Lane, as well as possible right-of-way needs on the south side of Highway 82, versus the disruption and build time for a new 2-lane bridge in that same location. What I mean by that is I think there are versions of a 3-lane bridge deck that give us the opportunity to build and utilize the bridge at the same time, while the time frame of that process would take longer, perhaps a year longer, than just bridge replacement. But with bridge replacement of a 2-lane bridge, we would potentially need a temporary bridge for access in and out of Aspen with minimal disruption. The other item here is approval times. What does it take for us to get approvals for the 3 lanes versus 2 lanes, and what that means for implementation and build? Along with that, I think that there would need to be a real review of the proposed menu items of S-curve improvements, as well as possible bus lane coming off of the bridge, heading down valley to the roundabout, what would be needed there, et cetera. To further that conversation, I think that there was some discussion last night about what we see as the roundabout, the current roundabout, as an impediment to more system-wide improvements, and that a conversation about improvements to the roundabout may need to happen at a later time. But after that, we had also looked at the 3 options that were presented was a 3-lane bridge replacement, split-shot approach with a new alignment and new bridge connecting to the west end of existing Main Street. Again, there are questions around that because we have not spent a lot of time looking at split-shot solutions. We would need to, we have questions around the approval process for that, a supplemental EIS or NEPA process, whatever is necessary there to amend the record of decision. We have some questions around design elements, impacts to the west end of Maine, including the cabin and villas. So what I think we want to do here today is we need to give a little direction about information that we need in order to follow a path here. Whether we want to start construction on a new 3-lane bridge, we need to know what that takes. If we want to consider the split shot or the bridge of the split shot being integral to replacing the new, the current alignment and the like. So really, we're at a point right now where we can start to think about how to proceed, what we need to get going, and really get these kicked off. Obviously, we've had some requests from members of the public that are urging us to get any process that we may need for approvals, get those underway. So, as I said, for me last night, when we talk about a priority, and my priority that I share with council, I believe, is to replace the Castle Creek Bridge as soon as we can. So I'm interested in what that means. But last night I had questions, outstanding questions around what a 3-lane bridge and the 3-lane bridge impacts would be, as well as the right-of-way and the information through the S-curves and those options that we have there. So that's where I sit right now, is that for me, I am interested in what does it take for us to get, what are the details around S-curve improvements and a 3-lane possible bridge deck there? What does it take to get that going? And at the same time, I do support looking into amended EIS or amended RODs for the split shot, which may be a solution that the community favors going forward. So that's where I'm at. I need to hear a little bit of input from you guys about what your interest is in moving something forward. Ward, once again, since you are away from us, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give some input or some thoughts on where we're at.
Well, I think I've expressed this. I think everybody knows where each other stands on this. I believe that 4 lanes is a necessity for an entrance. So I still stand for the preferred alternative without the light rail corridor. I don't think that that's feasible. I don't think there's community support. I think the expense is way too much. So I still support the preferred alternative. With a narrower width, eliminating the light rail aspect of that. And my second choice would be the split shot. And I understand where the rest of the council stands. So I would like to see what we have to do to start an EIS process for the Castle Creek Bridge. And a question on if we pursue also a split shot, if that is going to need a required community vote, because that will be on Merle Thomas open space that has been used for open space, even though it might have been purchased or conveyed as a transportation corridor or transportation funds. So I see the handwriting on the wall that the majority of the council wants to go with replacing the Castle Creek Bridge, but I think that the time that was projected from Jacobs and the length of time to get that done would be longer than it would be to get at least part of the process built by putting a bridge at the end of 7th Street with perhaps that is an aspect for a split shot, and that could be used during the construction of the Castle Creek Bridge. So I'm in support of a letter to CDOT telling them that we want to proceed with this and get the ball rolling what EISs are needed and a better understanding of what the time frame is. We saw quite a lengthy time frame to get a 3-lane bridge built. I think perhaps a less strenuous process for replacing the 2-lane, because that I think is in a letter from CDOT from July 10th indicated that that would be less stringent. But at the very least, let CDOT know that we are agreed that we're going to proceed with an entrance to Aspen, and that the majority prefer the Castle Creek Bridge. But in the interest of time, I think that we should pursue also the EIS or modification of the record of decision to include a split shot.
Thank you for that, Ward. And just to keep conversation moving forward, that kind of summarizes where I'm at as well. I'm interested in a letter to CDOT that explains where we're at and that we are interested in pursuing these alternatives. Sam?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to stress is trying to solve this problem without reopening the record of decision and going for a categorical exemption or exclusion, whatever the E is. Trying to work within the right-of-way that we have so that rebuilding our current bridge, even if it is a shifted method, is the quickest possible. Even with Jacob's engineering report, I found that to be quite murky because I don't think they even know until we go back to CDOT and or NEPA and ask for a categorical exclusion for something of the like. And with that afterwards, I just think whether it be an EIS or something else, is like answering the question, do we need a second bridge? I feel like a lot of these arguments came in at the 11th hour as far as wildfire evac and traffic transportation stuff. Just to like, if we do need a second bridge, I want it to be proven so that we can get like community support behind it. If the fire community wants to come and present to us saying that that's absolutely needed. And with that, we talked about the modified split shot, and I think it's very important to use the term modified because we just studied the split shot. It was something that doesn't work if you have to go through the roundabout. I think some goals I'd like to really highlight beyond replacing the current bridge is no traffic light on 7th and Main, no traffic light at Cemetery Lane, potentially a roundabout at Cemetery Lane, potentially a slip lane to come back in a one-way configuration on potentially a new bridge if deemed necessary. So those are the things that I'm really looking for, but the main component of what I'd like to stress is just going for that categorical exclusion first and foremost, and understanding that I think the 3-lane shifted is probably the only tenable solution without putting in a temporary or new bridge, just because it's the one that keeps 2 lanes open during the entire time, and I just can't imagine how any of the other situations would work. So that is the biggest thing. I know we got $8 million allocated for this sort of work, so those things is why I would push the spending towards. And understanding things like right-of-way acquisition, understanding how we can mitigate making sure that the Gregory property is not taken, going on like a information campaign as far as I don't feel like Jacob said that other people would be losing like much property as far as like the people at 814 West Bleecker. I mean, you already have 3 lanes there, so I don't understand why they would even need to come closer to their property except around that S curve. So, and then just advancing conceptual drawings of like a 3-lane shifted bridge, I think is another big part of this goal. So that would be what I have to say about this as far as goals and what I look forward to in next steps.
Thank you. And I appreciate those comments and I agree with a lot of what you just said. John?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat some remarks I made last night about why I feel a second bridge is necessary. Our public transit is not functioning the way it should be right now. It's sharing lanes with general purpose traffic. Our evacuation routes, the comments made last night by Fire Chief Anderson were enough to affirm my understanding that we do need better evac routes and emergency access routes, not now or not later, but we need them now. I'm also struck by the thought that the very people that are asking us to fix the bridge now seem to be the same people advocating for the 2 or 3 lane bridge replacement, which has been shown to take the longest time to complete. I do not see the logic of spending the time and money to build a temporary bridge only to remove it later. That makes no sense to me. I would support an SEIS on the split shot with modification of a split lane down valley for Cemetery Lane residents. I just want to be clear, I do not support the 2 or the 3-lane bridge replacement. I support adding another bridge, whether that's the preferred alternative or the split shot. I am uncertain at this time. Thanks.
Thanks.
Leaves me. I think there's 2 pieces of this that I would like to pursue concurrently. One is obviously the bridge replacement, which I've expressed my views on clearly, but I will come back to. The second is traffic flow improvement. You know, my gut for a long time, since I've been thinking about this, has been that there's a lot of improvement that we could make to traffic flow for the benefit of both buses and general vehicular traffic, without having to create a whole new entrance experience to Aspen, which, in my opinion, the preferred alternative and probably the split shot would forever change the character of Aspen negatively. But I think that there's a lot of things that we can do with the existing alignment from either Brush Creek or Intercept Lot into the core of Aspen that could improve the flow of traffic meaningfully, that aren't as drastic measures. And I think that was reinforced by option 5, which Jacobs showed to us yesterday, that showed, I believe that was the second highest rated option that they studied in their traffic model. And it maintained a 2-lane bridge, which I'm not advocating for, but just using to make my point here, that they maintained a 2-lane bridge, made some minor modifications to the roundabout, and just that scored second highest behind the preferred alternative. So my point here is I would like to direct staff to work as a team with our incredible consultants that we've got and our incredible staff and the county and CDOT and FHWA to work on improving traffic flow and find the highest ROI measures that we can implement to help improve traffic flow for the benefit of all vehicular travel, both buses and all other vehicles. I think that's a huge point that we shouldn't miss here, is that we can really make progress there. So that would be part 1 of my request. Part 2 of my request would be, let's address the immediate need to replace the Castle Creek Bridge. My priority would be a 3-lane shifted, if for no other reason than it maintains 2 lanes of travel during the construction process. Explicitly, I would direct staff to pursue that bridge replacement in the most expeditious means possible. I don't need to get into all the details. Sam mentioned a lot of things. Try to avoid opening the record of decision. Find the financing, get the design going. Let's advance this as quickly as possible. I believe that we as a community, if we are clear on our desire to maintain the character of our entrance, we can get this done. We can get CDOT on our side. We can get FHWA on our side. We can maintain a really important open space for our community and a really important character-defining element of our community. So once again, to be clear, I want to, my preference would be to direct staff to immediately pursue replacement of Castle Creek Bridge with the 3-lane shifted concept and simultaneously work with our partners to improve traffic flow along Highway 82. Thanks.
Thanks. What I would say is your first request about looking at the greater system and the roundabout is a whole nother project. I would really love to stay focused on priority number 2 that you just said, because that's going to take all of our energies. I agree that there can be some progress made in the entire routing, but right now we need to deal with what you were talking about. The number 1 priority is Castle Creek Bridge. And I think that if we send them off on other work right now, that's going to be delayed. So I would really like to have all of our energies focused on that. That would be my
Well,
request
to
to you.
counter that, isn't exploring the split shot and recontemplating that other work?
No, I think that's part of what we're doing here. So you have support for some, you don't, right now, there is not three that support what you just put forth about pursuing the 3-lane shifted. There's not support for that yet. There is support for finding out the details about 3-lane shifted and to find out if it can be done and how it can be done. And there's also support from council members for an alternative bridge and an alternative routing. So I think work needs to go on both of these things. We're not in a position where we can just go out and start chipping concrete and start building stuff.
I wasn't suggesting.
We have to go get our approvals, we have to go find out what that's gonna take, and that's where I think our energy needs to be. The 3-lane shifted or the Castle Creek Bridge replacement has some council support, but it doesn't have majority of council support to be the only solution moving forward. You heard Ward that was saying that doesn't do it for him. He is looking for a 4-lane solution. You heard from John that the 3-lane shifted does not do it for him. He is looking for another solution. For me, the 3-lane or 2-lane Castle Creek Bridge is just a part of this. It's a part that's necessary and it has to happen. So my suggestion is that yes, this work moves forward so that we find out what it takes to modify. And again, I mean, when it comes to the preferred alternative, I mean, I don't support a traffic light at 7th. I don't support a 400-foot long tunnel. I don't support it coming across Merle like that. So for me, I'm not supportive of the preferred alternative. And again, it's not because of my personal views. This is what I'm hearing from the community and the people that I represent. That's all I'm talking about. My personal is to do less. Less is more for me in this. But what I'm hearing from my community, and I respect them and I want to represent them, is that they do want to have the conversation about an alternate route and another bridge for emergency access reasons, for transit reasons. And then that builds back into what you were talking about further system improvements. Right now, what we're really talking about is a 1/4 mile from the roundabout in, a little more than a 1/4 mile. But this is what we're talking about because we have a failing bridge that we know that we want to address. Beyond that, we see that there's possible improvements to the both ingress and egress of our community. So I think they need to move forward together. I think we need to get, I like Ward's suggestion of starting with a letter. Let's get our team in touch with CDOT and let them know where we are, current status, what we seek to achieve, what our priorities are, and then let's try to move those forward. That's where I'm at, is, you know, I'm really interested in how this Castle Creek Bridge and the 3-lane shifted really plays out. I've only really seen a little bit of that kind of presentation. I have a few unanswered questions around that. But if that is something that can go on without new approvals, and that is something that can go on while keeping 2 lanes open, I support that. But I need to find that out. I still don't know that detail. So I'm all for moving that forward. But I also think that you have council support for looking at what it takes to change that EIS. You know, I would really love for us to come out of this moving those forward. That's the best that we can do right now. We can't go out and start turning dirt, but we can start moving these forward. Ward, comments?
Yeah, I would just like council support for sending that letter to CDOT, letting them know that we want to proceed. A council hasn't done that, I think, ever. Start the process of finding out what kind of EIS we will need. Sam last night made some good points, but we don't know until we get into this how accurate some of those prices and a lot of those time frames and everything are. So to move forward with starting with CDOT, any EIS categorical exemption for one thing or another, but to get the ball going, rolling with CDOT and finding out what EISs need to be done and what kind of hurdles they're gonna throw our way to allow us to get this funded by FHWA and CDOT.
Thanks, Ward. I agree. I think we need to start it rolling. I think we need to start the conversations.
My only comment on that would be, let's make sure that our staff and our team thinks that's a good idea too. I have no experience interacting with CDOT, so just want to make sure that we're not somehow shooting ourselves in the foot with that tactic.
Okay. Sarah, your input?
I need clarity on what the letter says.
What's that?
I need clarity on what the letter says.
Sure, we'll help you, we'll help get it written.
Regarding writing a letter, you always have the opportunity to write a letter to CDOT. That's, they're open and take that information. Whether they will respond to it, again, is their choice. I do want to refer back to the July 10th letter that was pretty clear. If you want to do anything moving forward that is around these technical questions you have, it's a supplemental EIS if you agree to the 10 project objectives set in 1998. If you don't agree to those 10 project objectives from 1998, it's a new record of decision that both CDOT and FHWA have to agree to. I just want to remind you the decision-making is not in the council's hands here in 99% of this. And so you can ask, and I encourage you to ask if you think that's what the community is expecting of you. But ultimately, you need to make a case of how any deviation relates to those 10 community objectives set back in the 1998 ROD.
The only counter to that is just, I've read that July 10th letter being like, this is if you want to change the record of decision, but if you want to do a 3-lane shift in and you can leave the record of decision in place, that it might be a different story. And that's something that I don't feel like I have clarity from the July 10th letter. And that's why I still believe in this categorical exemption as a possibility, just because it doesn't make sense to me that a bridge at a 50.3 needs to be scrutinized in such a way to replace it with a 3-lane bridge in basically the exact same spot. It just seems like you're asking for failure at a certain point. And this is not an accusatory way. I know what you're saying, Sarah. I'm just saying I'm trying to make sense of it all because it seems overly complicated for something that should be much simpler when we're talking about a replacement of a bridge in the same spot, essentially.
That will still require a supplemental EIS that is accepted by FHWA and CDOT. So you have the option of us working through that, with CDOT about that scope. You have the option to work independently. You need to contemplate whether you're prepared to self-fund the 3-lane because CDOT has said their priority is the PA for their funding, not something other than the PA. And so right, there's other communities that self-funded things on the state highway system, but the asset is the state highway system's asset. So, that's not uncharted territory for CDOT. I was just talking to a colleague of mine on a Front Range community that's doing about $175 million self-funded project and not using state funds for it, but it still required the coordination, the EIS, the NEPA process, all of that still had to happen. So I think you need to ask yourself some higher level questions. You guys are focusing on positions and I really think what you have is a process situation rather than your positions. You need to decide, do you want to direct us to do any of this technical study that would come under the EIS with using those 10 criteria from 98? Or if you disagree with that 10 criteria, then we have a larger scope that we need to price out for you that's a new record of decision, which opens everything back up. I do not believe, from what we heard, that we have enough information that we can commit to you that the 3-lane bridge would fit within the existing footprint and that the additional right-of-way takes would definitely, I think, trigger some concerns that elevate it not being just an offline bridge. I don't think it's as simple as perhaps you're hoping it would be.
And once again, not being critical, but you keep saying, I don't think, we don't know. And that's the part that like bothers me the most, especially when it comes to dealing with CDOT. I feel like they're sick of us is the sense that I get and the way that we go about things. So they're just this like boogeyman of an entity that like I feel like I get like very little clarity on in the long run because they got so much other stuff going on and they're just annoyed by everything that we do. So they don't give us like concrete answers.
So respectfully, I have over 20 years of experience working with Department of Transportations across this country. And I will share with you, this is very typical because there is a plan in place and their direction and some of their legal obligations under federal law are to follow the plan in place that has been approved. So you're asking them to bend in ways that they do not necessarily have that flexibility to that extent. And, you know, we are one of thousands of projects across the country that would love that additional flex. And I just don't necessarily think that, you know, as CDOT looks at its funding priorities, it needs to have complete assurance with what it's funding. And so you know, as you think about your options tonight, you know, you could direct us again back to supplemental EIS, if you'll use those 10 criteria, or not, to do the record of decision. And we can have that conversation with CDOT and report back to you. We can have Jacob start working on scopes of what those costs are for you. But right now, it's pretty amorphous of what we're going back and telling CDOT.
I can help try to clarify that a little bit on this piece. I think that what we need to tell CDOT is that the preferred alternative is not an acceptable option to our community at this time. Period. That has been determined.
That has not been determined.
That has been determined by a majority of this council.
Yeah, that's not the whole community.
Thanks for the interruption, Warren.
Bill, you're finished talking. I don't require or appreciate snarky responses.
I was not finished talking, and I don't appreciate your comments.
Good, we know where each other stand.
Say what you want to say.
Can you ask him to stop interrupting me, please?
Go ahead.
I'll reiterate my first point. I think that the letter should clearly state to CDOT that this council, on behalf of the community, has determined that the preferred alternative is not acceptable to it. We would like to pursue two alternate means. Number one, replacement of the existing Castle Creek Bridge with the new 3-lane shifted, and we would like to very clearly understand what the options to pursue that might be. And it sounds like the second would be this modified split shot concept that several of you are interested in exploring.
I agree. I agree with all of that except for limiting it to the 3-lane shifted on the new bridge. I just want to say, we want to replace the bridge. We can ask them about 2 and 3 and how that works, but I don't want to limit it just to the 3. But I agree with what you're saying. That's what we should be expressing to CDOT, and we should be having a conversation. We need to open the dialogue with them, you know? So I agree.
That's fine with me. I just do want to reiterate, the openness for the bridge replacement is fine. But once again, the 3-lane shifted, the only reason why we talk about it in such terms is because it's the only one that we've been told leaves 2 lanes open. So it's just like, I can't imagine, but it's fine.
I totally,
Yeah.
I agree. We just don't have that finality, so I just am like reserved to say, I want to just know where they stand with us in any situation. So I agree with that. That is what I would like to open the conversation with CDOT. I would love for us to perhaps draft this letter and then get council to review it and approve it.
So moved.
Okay?
So can I have clarification if I'm asking to start a supplemental environmental impact study?
That is not what we are asking you, because there is still optimism that there might be an opportunity to avoid that. And what we want to start with is clear communication to CDOT and our other partners that what they are under the assumption is acceptable to our community is not. And so we would like to pursue other things, and we want very clear direction on how we go about that.
And their answer might be, start a supplemental EIS.
It might be.
That is what Jacobs told us yesterday.
Right, but not CDOT. Not explicitly based on, this is what we want to do.
Okay. So there is support for drafting a letter. It does need to come back to council for approval, though. That is our
Corey?
first step. Yeah.
I'd just like confirmation that any of these supplemental or EIS is, the July 10th letter, I think, stated that the city would have to fund that, and I just want confirmation in the letter to CDOT to basically to memorialize what the July 10th letter said, or make sure that that was a final determination of CDOT.
Okay. Funding will be part of it. All right, any other questions? Anything else that we need from tonight?
I need a motion that includes the contents of the letter. I had shared with you yesterday, I would need a motion tonight to have clarity. So please make sure we get that done as part of this.
Well, we're gonna draft the letter and we're gonna bring it back for council approval. So, we're not gonna write it right now, but what we wanted was, opening a dialogue with CDOT, to express, what we've heard about preferred alternative, and that we are interested in what the process is to start Castle Creek Bridge replacement, and evaluation of, a split shot, on a new alignment with a new bridge. And what does it take? We would just want to start the dialogue.
Yeah.
Ward had an additional request that if there's, to find out definitively if supplemental EIS are self-funded.
Yes.
That's where we're at. Great.
Any supplemental EIS is at the city's expense.
Okay. Ward was requesting that we confirm that with CDOT. So, Ward, Sarah is saying yes to you. Would you still like that in clarification from CDOT in the letter?
Yeah, CDOT's the one that's gonna determine it. I understand what Sarah said. I understand what the July 10th letter stated. But I want a final determination. I'm kind of in the ballpark with Sam that we don't know what we have until it's cast in steel or a finalization of what CDOT says.
Thank you.
I just want to say too, when it comes to the CDOT letter, the whole idea behind it a lot is that I don't call it virtue, I call it value signaling, being like, please help us actually get the values that we're looking for here in Aspen. We're not looking for a stoplight, we're not looking for a disconnect from Cemetery Lane, we're not looking for the flaws of using so much open space, can it be less sort of thing. I'd like to think any rational organization or human being would be like, yeah, we'll work with you on that, whether it be supplemental EIS, categorical exclusion, or something else, but it really should be a lot of our values, and we're not trying to be annoying, we're trying to solve a problem because our bridge is aging.
I support the use of language that comes from a collaborative, cooperative, understanding place.
Yeah, thank you.
I do. Can I get one other council member to say that they support that type of approach and language?
I support that.
Thank you very much. All right, in the form of a motion, I will make a motion to direct the city manager and staff to prepare a letter from city council to CDOT expressing our interest in not implementing the preferred alternative at this time and looking into process and funding needs for replacement of the Castle Creek Bridge, as well as potential SEIS for or reopen rod or whatever it would be for a potential split shot alignment. with the qualifier that the language shall be with a collaborative, cooperative, understanding tone that is seeking CDOT's guidance and input.
I'll second, and can I also suggest some enhancements, perhaps? Specific to the replacement of the bridge, I think we should clarify to them that we are most intrigued by the 3-lane shifted option, but would like to explore all options for the replacement of the Castle Creek Bridge in its current location.
I will not support that, well, those additions to the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not going to accept it right now. Wait till the language comes back. If there's a way for us to signal both opportunities without a preference, maybe that's how we do it.
Okay, to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that the 3-lane was a preference over the split shot. I was suggesting it was the preference of the bridge replacement options, just to be perfectly clear.
And I'm not going to include that in my motion at this time because I'm not sure that that has council support.
Okay.
So there's a motion on the floor for direction for a letter.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion, and a second by John. Any further discussion? Good job. Could we have a roll call vote for the motion on the floor, please?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Mayor, I
Thank
move
you for
we
bringing that
adjourn
back
the
tonight.
meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote for adjournment, please?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. Thank you to all the staff members that stayed for the duration of the meeting tonight. Thank you to members of the community that are still here as well. And always, thank you to Grassroots TV. We will see you in a week.